Sound Editions presents Mission Earth, Volume 1, The Invaders Plan, by Lronhubbard.
Hi there. I am 54 Charlie 9, robot brain in the translatophone, and in accordance with the Royal Publishing Code of Voltar, I am delighted to give this account of how I translated Mission Earth. Frankly, it wasn't easy. First, I must apologize for the number of Earth cliches. The narrator of this tale used an appalling number of hackneyed Voltarian phrases. For example, glagged. In Voltarian, it means the withdrawal of blood from the head due to spaceship acceleration. In Earth language, the closest I can get is, he went white as a sheet. Long live His Majesty is as close as I can come to the Voltarian phrase, may your Majesty immortalize. If I translate it literally, it comes out, may your Majesty drop dead. You see the problem. I'm also required to inform you that I have operated strictly within the bylaws of the Machine Purity League, one of which says that no machine, even if pounded upon, may reproduce swearing or lewdness in any other way than... And just between us girls, I nearly bleeped myself out. Boy, what they say and do on planet Earth. So don't blame me for any of this, I just translated it. But I can see now why there's no such place as planet Earth. You'd have to be nuts to live there. Sincerely, 54 Charlie 9.
To Lord Tern, Justiciary of the Royal Courts and Prison, Government City, Planet Voltar, Voltar Confederacy. Your Lordship, sir, I, Sultan Kreese, late Secondary Executive of the Coordinated Information Apparatus Exterior Division, in all humbleness and gratitude, do hereby undertake, as instructed, to confess the full and awful record of my villainous, despicable, and shocking crimes against the state in the matter of Mission Earth. And in return, I may hope to benefit from your stately and compassionate offer of possible leniency. All hail your lordship and his court. Knowing your lordship's keen interest at the moment in one Jethro Heller, it must be admitted that he is the proper hero of this tale, and I, unfortunately, am cast as the villain. But those are the roles the gods capriciously chose to put us in, and it was fate and fate alone that forced me to do the things I did. Even on that fatal night when it all began, I was the unwilling victim of forces spinning far beyond my control. It was 1/2 hour after sunset, on the eve of the Empire holiday, and all offices were closed. I was about to embark on a relaxing outing in the desert with friends when the terrible summons came, and I was taken by guards for a confrontation with the all-powerful chief executive and unchallenged tyrant of the Coordinated Information Apparatus, Lumbar Hist. He hadn't turned on his office lights, and the twilight coming in through the barred windows had turned red. The silhouette of his great hulking frame seemed to be sitting in black blood. He was clutching a wrinkled piece of paper in his hands, staring with bulging eyes. But when those cold, bloodshot eyes rose slowly to focus on me, he came out of his chair like a launched missile, jerking me by my lapels to within an inch of his nose.
Now you've done it.
Ow! He hit me on the thigh with his stinger.
Why don't you stop this? Why can't you attend to these things, you worthless? Shut up and come with me. Guards, get my tank. Now, now, now!
Drives roared, equipment clanged, and within minutes we were headed out into the Voltarian night. A convoy, bristling with weapons and black with the uniforms of the 2nd Death Battalion. Only the gods and Lumbar Hist knew where we were going, or why. I cowered in the darkness with a sinking, sick feeling, trying to imagine what I could have done to raise his wrath. Why was Lumbar Hist in such a frothing frenzy? We had pulled up at the fleet patrol base. Hist and the silent squad skulked along the row of ships, checking the identifying numbers of each. Suddenly Hist stopped.
That's it! That is the patrol ship that Heller made the run to Earth in. Quickly!
I shrank back into the deeper shadows of a landing pad in terror. It wasn't possible. Hist was having the airlock of a Royal Fleet ship broken into. This was madness. Within moments, 15 men of the 2nd Death Battalion had melted aboard. Hist and the rest started running away, then crouched like wolves back to the waiting trucks. I ran too, and had just reached the truck's shadows when another figure ran up to Hist.
They took the bait.
Hist smiled in cold satisfaction. We watched from the cover of the trucks as floodlights came on far across the tarmac at the fleet barracks, and 20 fleet spacemen came banging through the door, pulling on their uniforms and gear as they ran toward the patrol ship, where the Death Battalion squad was lying in wait. The ship's engines built to a roar, and the patrol craft leaped like a lightning flash and was gone into the stars.
Well, in less than an hour, Heller's crew will be safely rotting in the lowest hole in Spitios, and the ship will be found burned to a crisp in the great desert. Good, good. Now to the officers' club. Load up!
The sports arena of the Royal Fleet Officers Club was a brilliant blare of lights and sound. Lumbar Hist stationed a cordon of 30 Death Battalion troops in strategic places behind the shrubs that lined the arena's exit. Then he shoved me forward to a barred window near the door, and we peered in. They were playing bullet ball. The player nearest us was blond, a tall, good-looking fellow, very well built, holding 2 of the rock-hard balls, one in each hand. He was facing 2 opponents across the floor of the vast space. The 2 were evidently combining against him to eliminate him. Suddenly, one of them hurled a ball at him with blinding velocity. I could hardly believe what I saw. In one motion, he had thrown his right-hand ball and caught the incoming sizzler. His throw hit the opponent in the chest hard enough to knock him completely out of his painted circle. The crowd was going wild. Lumbar Hist twitched a finger in the air, and an agent of the Death Battalion's dreaded knife section materialized beside us out of the shadows. Hist pointed to the blonde man.
That is Jethro Heller. Now do exactly as I told you.
The knife section man nodded and dissolved into the night, and soon reappeared, dressed in the uniform of a Royal Fleet orderly. He suddenly slipped in through the arena door. The crowd had grown quiet as Heller faced his one remaining opponent across the floor. Everything about Heller was bright, full of life. His bag of bullet balls was nearly full, and his opponent had but a few left. The crowd was silent now, tense. Heller was saying something.
Want to give up? We can just toss in our bags and call it a draw.
The answer was a wicked, curving throw that sizzled within inches of Heller's head. Then his hapless opponent threw another and another, as Heller easily ducked and dodged, never even moving his feet. In a moment, the other man's bag of balls was empty, and knowing he was defeated, the man simply walked to the forward edge of his circle and stood there with his chest fully exposed for Heller's throw, eyes closed, awaiting the inevitable. The crowd grew hushed, every eye on Heller as he stepped slowly sideways in his circle, tossing one ball up and down in the air. And then Jethro Heller very deliberately put 1 foot outside his ring. He'd thrown the game. The crowd went crazy. When I turned to look at Lumbar Hist, his nostrils were flared grotesquely and his lips curled up away from his teeth in utter consuming hate. Lumbar Hist had clawed and beaten and blackmailed his way up from the slums of Port City to his powerful position. But he was still ugly, pocked, treated with contempt and fear by women. Jethro Heller was everything that Lumbar Hist never was and never could be. Heller was coming this way. We ducked quickly as the door opened. The knife section man disguised as a fleet orderly came first, and then Heller walked out into the night, wiping the sweat from his face with the sleeve of a sweater thrown loosely across his bare back. In that moment, another man from the knife section emerged silently from the bushes behind Heller as the door to the arena swung shut. And though no sound could have possibly betrayed the attacker, Heller was suddenly a blinding fury of motion. Twisting in midair, he swung his foot in a shattering roundhouse kick, and the knife section man hit the pavement hard. When he jumped and rolled to stab, Heller's other foot connected with the man's wrist, and I heard the snap of bone as the knife went spinning. The shrubs were alive now with rushing figures in black. With sizzling cracks, electric whips snaked out, and Heller twisted in writhing arcs of green fire. Heller was coiled in 5 electric whips, and still he managed to turn, struggling for the door. But Lumbar Hist had planted himself squarely in front of the closed door and stood there, smiling, blocking any possible retreat, a paralysis dagger held high. He struck. The deadly shaft plunged into Heller's shoulder, and Heller started to fall. But his face turned up to Lumbar Hist, and I swore I saw a light of recognition the moment before his eyes snapped shut. Like ghosts, the guards went into action.
Take him to Spitios. Deepest cell. Electric wire cage. And no communication with anyone. Move. Get over here, Sultan Grease.
Yes, sir.
Now, you've got to spend the rest of the night looking for that report that Heller wrote before it gets to higher levels, you sniveling incompetent.
We didn't just search till dawn. We spent the entire Empire holiday ransacking offices, pawing through files, picking locks and safes, and violating the most sacred offices of Government City. But we didn't find the report that meant so much to Lumbar Hist, and as the green dawn of the next workday on Voltar painted an eerie wash across his office, we sat, bleary-eyed, slumping with exhaustion and defeat. He hadn't decided to kill me. Yet.
It must have gone straight to the Grand Council, or even to the Emperor himself. This is bad. This is very bad. I'm going to need Lord Ender for this. Yes, my asinine superior does have his uses. Now, let's see. I know I have those pictures of him and that pretty spaceman somewhere. I may need them. And you will go to the meeting along with us when the Grand Council takes this matter up, which they will.
Could you please tell me what all of this is about?
About? It is about Earth, you idiot. Earth, which is the responsibility of your Section 451. 2 years ago, I ordered you to block and change every report the patrol service turned in. Now you've let one get through. Jethro Heller's report will make them certain that their precious invasion timetable has been upset. To hell's with their timetable. You've threatened our timetable. You've probably wrecked the entire basic plan of the apparatus. Oh!
The spectacle of the Grand Council meeting was blinding. In the overwhelming vastness of the council chamber, The vice-regal chairman of the crown lifted a jeweled finger and cymbals crashed, making my head hurt worse. I was sick in more ways than one. For 3 days, lumbar hist had kept everyone in the apparatus in fear for their lives. And then I had been subjected to the time shift. I had never been to Palace City before. I knew about the black hole that Voltar engineers had moved into the mountain behind Palace City, and I knew that the resulting space-time distortion put Palace City forever 13 minutes into the future. But I had never experienced traveling through that time shift, and I can testify that it's not only hard on your watch. Now, here I was, half expecting the Grand Council to call me by name and to summarily sentence me to endless torture for the kidnapping of Jethro Heller and a Royal Fleet crew. Lumbar Hist sat unmoving directly behind Lord Endow. Lord Endow was in his dotage, short and fat, and kept a nurse with him to mop the slobbers from his chin. Although he was head of the exterior division, which made Lumbar and all the apparatus under his authority, it was clear that Lumbar Hist held sway over the old, no doubt based on Endow's insatiable appetite for pretty young men. Endow seemed to drift in and out, and maybe senility was setting in. The vice-regal chairman picked up an official-looking report. Lumbar nudged Endow. This was it.
Lords of the realm, we have before us now a matter of the gravest proportions. This report, I hold, may well have the most dire and devastating effect of any report ever to be taken up in this chamber. More than grave, it may very well disarrange and cause us to change the entire invasion timetable.
All hell's broke loose then. Hist jabbed Endow in the back hard enough to bruise him. Endow stood up.
The crown, if you please. Surely this is beyond consideration. The timetable bequeathed us by our ancestors is inviolate. Indeed, it has the status of divine command. What could possibly justify such a desperate measure? It would irrevocably disrupt all divisions.
This report contains information gathered by a routine survey of a planet that is on the invasion timetable for the coming century. A survey ordered by the king's own astrographer. The planet is known as Blito P3. The local inhabitants call it Earth. It is a humanoid planet, not unlike our own planets, Manco and Friston, that lies on our invasion route into the galaxy. It will be vital as a supply base, and as a key point in a future defense perimeter. When this most recent survey expedition was sent, manned by a fine crew of the Royal Fleet,
now rotting in Spitios, I shuddered.
And headed by a competent combat engineer,
Gods, he meant Jethro Heller.
They returned with this report, which has confirmed our worst fears. The present inhabitants are wrecking the planet. The oxygen in the oceans there has depleted 14% in the last third of a century, which means the destruction of the hydrographic biosphere. The industrial waste in the atmosphere measures now in excess of 1 trillion tons. The upper atmosphere hydrocarbon balance is critical and worsening. The sulfur content is excessive. The heat from their star is being trapped by the contaminated atmosphere, and their magnetic poles are wandering.
What does all this mean?
It means there is a double threat to that planet. One, they are burning up the oxygen at a rate that will cease to support life within the foreseeable future. Two, the increase in surface temperature, combined with wandering polar caps, could melt these and cover the bulk of their continental areas with water, making the planet almost useless. We have long known that they have developed thermonuclear devices, but those are primitive. And though there is the possibility of their blowing the planet up, that is not the primary threat. It is certain now that with pollution, they will have rendered the planet useless and uninhabitable long before the invasion called for in our timetable. The Crown, therefore, calls for opinions on the feasibility of making an immediate and preemptive strike on Blito P3. The Crown will hear the Lord of the Army.
We have no reserves. It will have to be handled by fleet.
Lord of the Fleet, Marines?
We are already stretched far too thin in two simultaneous campaigns. The planet Clitius and the Prince Mortai revolt on Calabar. Even if we had the troops, Earth might panic at a space invasion and use their thermonuclear weapons. That would blow the remaining oxygen cover off the planet and would only worsen the situation. We could send a peace mission.
May I remind your lordships that His Majesty requires that you arrive at a solution in this meeting.
That brought silence. Lumbar eagerly punched at Andow.
No, no!
May it please the Crown, although the resources of the Exterior Division are extremely overtaxed, I would consider allowing this unpleasant matter to be placed in its capable hands. It may be possible to infiltrate an agent into that population, an agent who could, under our careful and competent guidance, leak technical data into the normal channels of that planet, and thereby arrest or retard their planetary pollution until the appointed invasion date arrived, without improving their defenses. Of course, such a plan would require time, and the Exterior Division would not want to be harassed every month for demanded reports. And, of course, it would require, well, certain special appropriations. How much? What kind of appropriations? A mere pittance, nothing, when compared to a disastrous emergency, all-out attack. Say, 2 or 3 million credits. I think that may do nicely. For a start?
All in favor? It is decreed. The royal clerk shall draw up the authority to entrust this entire matter to the discretion of the Exterior Division. Time limits unspecified. 3 million credits allocated subject to adjustment. And I shall report to His Majesty that a plan has been approved and is in motion. All hail King the Lofty!
All hail King the Lofty!
The next morning, I waited in the anteroom of Lumbar Hist's other office, his secret office, in the crumbling black fortress of Spitios. From the ancient window, I looked out over the great desert. Under a nearby hill sprawled the ramshackle huts of Camp Endurance, Camp Kill to the apparatus thugs who lived there. It was supposedly a privation training camp for apparatus recruits. In fact, it was a cover for the tunnel that was the only entrance to the fortress prison of Spitios and the traffic that came and went there. The fortress was still believed to be radioactive, but that was an electronics trick of the apparatus to keep everyone away. The only thing that really radiated from Spitios was the suffering of the thousands of political prisoners of Lumbar Hist and the apparatus, writhing, rotting, and moaning their last days away, packed into foul cages a mile down into the ground. A clerk jerked his head toward the door for me to go in. Lumbar's Spitios office was adorned with priceless gold tapestries and silver urns plundered from a royal tomb. But somehow he had arranged and abused them so that they managed to look shabby. It was a gift he had.
Sit down, Sultan. Sultan, I have good news for you. A sort of celebration present for yesterday. As of this morning, you are relieved from post as Section Chief of 451. No, don't be afraid, Sultan. I have something much more interesting for you. And if you carry it off, who knows? You might become Chief Executive of the apparatus. even Lord of the Exterior.
I was in desperate trouble. I knew it. He wandered over and patted me on the shoulder. I flinched.
Sultan, I hereby appoint you as handler of the special agent we are going to put on Blito P3.
Oh, it was worse than I had thought. A handler is ultimately responsible for everything an agent in the field does. If anything goes wrong, the handler is summarily executed. But we don't have any agents of that caliber.
I am assigning 2 agents who are already on Earth to help you. Rat and Turb, 2 of the finest killers I know.
Oh, but Chief Executive, sir, they don't know geophysics from soup, and I certainly am not...
Sultan. You just have to get used to the idea that I really am your best friend.
Now I was in for it. What was next?
Rat and Turb are just your helpers. Have no qualms about the special agent. I have already decided on him. His name is Jethro Heller.
I tried to collect my wits. I thought I was having delusions. Jethro Heller? The Jethro Heller, hero of the fleet? The same Jethro Heller we had kidnapped?
He's known and trusted by the Crown. He has no training as a spy, and he knows nothing of how the apparatus works. All you have to do is ensure that he fails utterly. Close your mouth. You must be able to see what a pivotal role you have in this, Sultan. The last thing we want is Earth invaded and conquered by the present Voltarian government. We have our own plans for that planet, and our conquest must take place long before the official invasion date. We're not the least bit interested in Earth having clean air. We'll be done with it long before that matters, long before any oceans flood. So who the devils cares about that? No, you must make Heller fail utterly. Heller's first reports will be actual reports. Then we will have his style, and from there on intercept his reports and forge our own, while you keep him from getting into mischief.
But he'll never cooperate. He was kidnapped.
Oh, come with me and watch the master work.
The descent into the bowels of Spitios was like a trip into the infernal regions that some religions promised to the damned. We plummeted down the tubes, the noisome stench already gagging me. They sometimes just leave the remains of prisoners who have died until the cell is needed for someone else, or just pitch the newcomer in with the body. We got off at level 501. A long hall with moldy wire walls stretched out before us, and behind the highly charged mesh, sunken eyes peered at us. In the upper levels, there were secret laboratories of the apparatus. Some of their abandoned experiments were here. Deformed, distorted shapes, hideous, forgotten. Lumbar strolled along, twitching his stinger, deaf to the moans and pleas that marked our passage. He stopped at a cage and opened the door. Jethro Heller was strapped with electric cuffs to a cold stone ledge. Dried blood caked his shoulder.
Well, the drunks arrive at last.
It was the fleet's contemptuous name for the apparatus. Lumbar hissed, hands tightened on his stinger, but he managed to just smile cheerfully.
So far, so good, young man. This has been the beginning of a test. You may have found it to be uncomfortable, but we find it vital to pre-test candidates for important jobs.
He actually had the nerve to pat Heller on the ankle, then beckoned me outside.
Invent something easy. Tell him he passed, and then give him this.
He pulled from his pocket an original copy of the Grand Council order authorizing Mission Earth. Then he grabbed my lapels and snapped me up close.
Do not arouse his suspicion.
No.
Do not let him escape.
No. I was left alone in Spitios with Jethro Heller and the full burden of Mission Earth. I went reluctantly back into the cell. I pulled out my notebook and a pen. Tell me, how did you spot that the orderly at the sports arena was a fake?
From your accent, you're an academy graduate, aren't you? What sad route brought you to the drunks?
I was first hit with a wave of rage at his arrogance, then with amazement. He wasn't thinking about the pain of the electric cuffs or days of hunger and thirst. He actually seemed sad to see that another being could fall as low as I. How different things would have been if I had laid it all out, had come clean, had come to an honest understanding. But the black cloud of lumbar hist hung over me, and I didn't have the courage. Instead, in that moment, I sealed the doom of an awful lot of people. Come, just tell me about the orderly.
It only took one whiff of him. Spaceship crews have been known to kill someone who doesn't bathe. There are no smelly fleet orderlies. Besides that, his belt was upside down, his spats backwards, and there was the bulge of a forbidden knife at his back.
Ah, good. Keen perceptions. Now, why did you throw the bullet ball game away to that last opponent?
His sweetheart had come all the way from his home planet to see him play. He would have been humiliated.
I scribbled knowingly, then closed my notebook with a snap of finality. Excellent. Passed with all tubes blasting. You're just the fellow for the job. This man would never make a spy. I arranged to get him berthed in one of the rooms they keep set aside for apparatus officers in the upper levels of Spitios. Very plain and windowless, but at least there was a bath. I also arranged for an apparatus platoon to keep an around-the-clock watch on the room, on the pretense of guarding him from intrusion. Here, this will be a bit more comfortable, I should think. Heller just looked at me. I was not comfortable.
Let's have a look at that alleged Grand Council document. Well, it seems authentic enough. Earth, huh? I just came from there. Surveyed the place.
Precisely. And with all your other qualifications, that was why you were the exact and only officer for the job.
And so you kidnapped me.
We had to test.
I'll tell you what I'll do. I'm not part of your division. But if you can get the usual orders from the fleet personnel officer, I'll undertake your mission.
Well, fine. I think we can manage that all right. I'll go and get them right away.
Good. Now I need a shower. I want to get the stink of Spitios off me.
Bureaucracy. It's a system evolved so that nobody is ever responsible for anything. No one in all of Fleet Administration would transfer Jethro Heller to the Exterior Division. I was told it was impossible. Finally, I wound up with a set of what the Fleet Personnel Officer called Standard Combat Engineer Orders. When they were handed to me, I read, Jethro Heller, Grade 10 Combat Engineer, is hereby, as of this date, ordered to independent duty on his own cognizance, terminating on his own cognizance. Lumbar Hist, seated in a king's chair that had been looted from some royal tomb, looked agitated. We were watching the weekly freak parade. One wall of his tower office at Spitios was one-way glass, beyond which was a vast stone-lined room. Dr. Crow was displaying his week's production of horrors, created through cellular alteration. These abominations were sold to circuses and nightclubs for fantastic prices as denizens of newly conquered planets. I was feeling quite queasy. Here was a woman with breasts where her buttocks should have been. And now came a man whose legs had been switched with his arms. Crobe himself no beauty, too long a nose, too long in the arms and legs, stood beaming in the background like some weird bird. hissed, seemed perturbed, distracted. He took something out of a silver box and threw it at me sideways. It was the gold chain and emerald insignia of a grade 11 officer. It bumped me up 3 grades.
It's now in the data banks and legal. You'll be drawing a pay as of yesterday. Hey, now that should bring a nice price.
Krobe's assistants had wheeled in a cart with 6 children who had been genetically... I looked away. The trained act parade was coming on. The trainer, Countess Crack, was standing there in thigh-high black boots, a shabby coat, and little else, twitching a long electric whip. She was actually beautiful beneath the unkempt, degraded patina of Spidios. She had been convicted of training a ring of children to crack safes and to murder. Whether she did it or whether the rumors were true that she was framed by the government, the fact was she could train anything or anyone, and she could do it fast. She never smiled and was deadly if approached wrong. She started putting the performers of her trained act parade through their paces.
Sultan, I don't think you envision the scope of this. Power, Sultan, authority, the right of life and death over trillions of people, the wealth of 110 planets, all that will be ours. Those are the stakes. Our present rulers are decadent. They know nothing about the necessity of wiping out the riffraff from the ghettos, purifying the blood of the planet, sweeping away the weak. They know nothing of what to do with power. We use evil to sweep away evil. But the one weak link in all of this is Earth. That is the key, Sultan. The magical key to everything. When an instant invasion of Earth was planned, I thought we were ruined. But now I am counting on you. We need that planet desperately for a while, so do not fail me, Sultan.
He stabbed the stinger at the console before him, and Dr. Krobe and the Countess Crack came hurrying in.
Krobe, I have a job for you. We have a special agent going to Blito P3, and I want you to fix him up. Crack, you will train this agent in Earth languages. And no tricks, you perverted whore. Off the high tower you go if you teach him one word of espionage.
Like you.
Officer Grease will tell you both what to do. Now get out!
I fetched Heller from the room and rushed him off for his appointment with the Countess Crack in her training hall. Squarely in the middle of the great hall stood the Countess Crack. She brought the roaring electric whip far back and struck with it, her jackboot hitting the stone floor like a cannon shot, her pale hair flying. 5 ugly brutes from the apparatus were trying in vain to escape that vicious, scorching lash. There was some movement to my right, and when I looked, I instantly turned to run. But Heller was standing in front of the door, watching intently, blocking my way, the fool! Couldn't he see it? Its eyes were glowing from a darkened corner, a lepertige, all 900 pounds of it, unfettered and free. Its black and orange fur was matted, the fangs looked like gleaming yellow daggers. Then I noticed fresh blood around its lower jaw. Good gods, had the Countess fed somebody to it? It was licking one paw, also dripping blood. The Countess Crack stood in the midst of the apparatus brutes, the electric whip sizzling.
When you return, give this message to your boss. If he ever sends a maimed animal to me again, I will train one to find him and kill him. Put him in a warm cage and get Krobe to regrow those claws. Do not tease this animal. Go.
When she saw me, I knew I was in for it. We were an hour late. She started to say something, but she stopped. Her eyes had fallen on Heller, who was wandering through the vast array of machines designed to generate shock and inflict tortures. He seemed intently interested in them. Crack stood on the platform, watching with no expression on her face at all. She was as beautiful as any carved goddess of stone, and every bit as cold. Colder. The silence in the room was deafening as Heller continued to study the machines. He lost interest in the machines and turned to study some of the athletic equipment at the far end of the room. There were some rings on ropes that hung from the high center of the room. He jumped up and disengaged one that was hanging on the wall and swung in a long, graceful arc toward us. He let go, did a full body flip, and landed artfully on his toes 3 feet in front of the Countess Crack.
Hello. What is a beautiful creature like you doing in a place like this?
I cringed. The corniest cliche in any language, an outright sexual pass. And she had killed men for just reaching towards her. I gripped the plastic. For seconds she did not move. Then, abruptly, as though her legs had given way, she sank into her chair.
You shouldn't talk to me. I'm not worthy of you. I am vile, rotten, not fit to talk to you. That is the first friendly thing anyone has said to me in 3 years.
Heller just knelt beside her and took her hand, obviously distressed. He handed her his Red Star engineer's rag and sat there, not talking, just holding her hand as she continued to sob. Well, I could see nothing was going to get done at this rate. I went over to where the language files were and started pawing through the tapes. The zones of operations for Heller on Earth were going to be Virginia, Washington, D.C., and New York City. The tableau on the platform hadn't changed much, but she seemed to have stopped sobbing.
I'll be all right now.
I pulled a hypno-helmet down from the shelf, slipped the Virginia accent strip into it, and beckoned Heller over. Instead of letting me put the visored helmet on his head, he took it out of my hands, opened the toolkit on his belt, and started working on the gears inside the helmet.
There. That's better. Let's try it now.
He put the helmet on and pressed the button on the side. Incredible! An hour tape went through in 30 seconds.
Ah, very interesting accent.
Ah, indeed. You can't be understanding the words on that tape. If so, you'll know the next lines. My name is George. What comes next?
I have a dog. His name is Rover. Do you like dogs?
Amazing. Instant auricular assimilation and retention at hyperspeed.
Let me have another tape.
He plugged it in and pressed the button, oblivious to us.
I've never seen it done that fast. Oh, isn't he beautiful?
Well, if he can learn that fast, we'll just take the player and tapes to my room and he can learn there.
No! But, I mean, there's a regulation that equipment can't leave here.
I tapped Heller's shoulder as he finished his 4th tape. This looked like it could get dangerous. That's enough for today. We've got other appointments. Heller, I want you to listen to me. Mission Earth is of vital importance. You are new to this espionage game, and I am your handler, and I'm telling you that woman you just met is trouble. She is in Spitios for training children to rob banks and murder. In her 3 years here, she has killed 3 guards who have made advances toward her. Just 2 months ago in the training area, one of them tried to touch her, and she broke every bone in his body. And when he was hopelessly down, she stamped on him till he was a red paste. Nobody goes near her. The only person who can get away with hitting her is Lumbar Hist.
You mean the chief executive of the apparatus has hit her?
He hits anybody he wants to hit. Now, General, I can call you General, can I? I am a brother officer, and I've got to get you off this planet alive. Now, I know it's lonely in space, and you just got back from a long trip, but that woman is death incarnate. Stay away! As we walked to the room, he seemed to be thinking very hard. I could see I must have gotten through to him.
There's just one thing that has me puzzled.
What's that?
Would you say that her eyes were gray or sort of pale blue?
I awoke at dawn, all full of energy to blast us out of the Voltar Confederacy and get safely to Earth. But my plans and enthusiasm evaporated in a summons from Lumbar Hist. I sidled into his office as 15 top officials of the apparatus came out. Lumbar was not in good cheer.
Who sent for you? Shut up and sign this.
It was a receipt for a shipment of secret cargo from Blito P3. Below the signature line it said, Sultan Greece, Section Chief, Section 451.
Yes, I know. I have reappointed you as Section Chief of 451 because we can't find a suitable replacement.
Oh, does this mean that I'm relieved of Mission Earth?
Now you may wonder if this relieves you of Mission Earth. It does not. You continue to have that too.
But
You may be asking yourself, how can I be on Blito P3 and handle Section 451 on Voltar as well? But that is very simple. Your clerical staff here will carry on under Botch, your chief clerk, and send anything to you that needs to be signed. That reminds me, I don't trust the base commander in Turkey. You'll supervise him too. Now, the order for these invaluable shipments that come here from Blito P3 will be sent to you blank. You will fill them out and sign them as though you had placed the order yourself from here. Then the shipping form, attesting to each shipment from Blito P3, will be signed by you down there. And you will include with it a post-dated receipt saying the shipment was received in good order here. It's all very easy and straightforward.
But
It is simplicity itself, so do not make it complex. You're the only one whose signature we trust. So we want only your signature and identiplate on these shipments. You'll be receiving pay for all these posts, plus rake-offs and kickbacks, so you'll be wealthy.
Oh.
I'm glad we settled that. In the meantime, so long as this mission is still on Voltar, the Grand Council will be in a position to have Crown Inspectors sticking their noses into everything. And we can't have that, can we? So, my advice to you, Sultan Greece, is to let no dirt cool under your feet. Well, what are you standing there for? Get Mission Earth launched!
I rushed headlong through the bleak corridors of Spitios, clutched in a panic of terror, and when I burst into the training area, I thought I'd taken a wrong turn. The place was being cleaned. Countess Crack had an army of apparatus crew stripped to the waist, slinging soap, disinfectant, and the dirt of centuries around in a storm of activity. I sank down into a chair in disbelief.
All right, men, thank you. That's enough for today. You're all sweaty now, so you should go and wash your clothes and take baths. And since you've done so well, you may have the rest of the day off.
The men looked at each other. They looked at the door to see if execution squads were waiting. They looked at her.
Well, run along.
They bolted out the door en masse. This was not the Countess Crack I or anyone had known. What was she up to?
Hello, Sultan. I'm so glad you came. You have a very important job as Jetero's handler, you know.
Yes, which is why I'm here. We must get him trained.
He's doing very well. But I think we'd better do a little language brush-up on you.
What?
Just an accent check for the Earth languages. Let's see now, you'll need Turkish, American dialects and accents, maybe some Italian.
No. I'm not the one who needs it. We must get Heller off of this planet.
But she slipped the hypno-helmet over my head, and I went out like a switched-off glow plate. When I came to and I took off the helmet, I was surprised to see that half an hour had gone by. Countess Crack was waltzing around the room, holding a very feminine silver cover suit up to her.
Jet just sent this to me. Isn't he wonderful?
I'm getting him right now. You must get him trained.
No. Just give me 20 minutes. I have to get dressed.
When I came back later that day to fetch Heller from Crack for his appointment with Dr. Krob, I found them not bent over language tapes and earth maps, but in the middle of the training room floor with Heller teaching her dance routines. He was getting too close. If he touched her, she was going to kill him.
Let's see. When you lunge, I'm supposed to roll, not just stand there like a ninny and get hit. Try it again.
He lunged again, and once more she didn't roll, but instead bumped his hip and tottered off balance until she fell like a leaf against him, and he caught her in his arms. They stood that way for what seemed like an eternity. I waited in horror for the Countess Crack to erupt like a mad leopardage and claw him to shreds. And then he kissed her.
Jethro Heller!
They finally deigned to take some notice of me and walked over holding hands, looking at each other like a couple of insipid kids sharing some secret. We are due for our appointment with Dr. Krob. I left Heller in the biological section's library and found Krob in a rear operating room. He was putting the finishing touches on some poor wretch he had strapped down. He had replaced the poor arms and legs with tentacles and was bending over the thing with an eerie, ecstatic look on his face.
Come on out. I have a special agent for you to fix up.
The moment I said it, for some reason I was hit with a violent pain in the stomach. I thought it must have been the smell of rotting limbs and putrefied cultures that they leave lying around in vials and vats there. We went into the library where Heller was poring over some books on Earth. An assistant rolled in a tray with instruments rattling on it as Krob sat down across from Heller.
What is the name of the planet you're going to?
Blido P3, Earth.
Ah, yes, let's see. Take off your clothes, please.
I was feeling quite ill as Krob put Heller through a cursory examination. I wanted out of that awful stink.
You are from the planet Manco. You shouldn't have much trouble then on Earth. Its gravity is about 1/6 less, so you'll have to learn to walk. Oxygenate yourself before any strenuous exercise. The atmosphere is less dense. They have a food called hamburgers that will provide a balanced ration for you. They have something called a beer. You can drink that. But don't touch what they call the strong spirits. They mess up the cerebral orientation. Exercise every day in the low gravity. Are you listening to me?
Learn to walk, oxygen, exercise, hamburgers, beer. I heard you. I was just struck by these Earth races. Do you have a book called In the Mists of Time here?
Of course not. Fairy tales.
Yes, here it is. Now, let's see. Right here. Folk Legend 894. And it's said that in ages past, during the Great Rebellion of Manco, Prince Cocalcia did flee with the remnants of his fleet and took refuge then on planet Blido P3. And he did found there a colony, and he named it Atalanta. And there they prospered until they found it...
Rubbish. The humanoid form comprises 93.7% of all populations ever discovered. The humanoid form is inevitable from the basic survival demands of any reasonable carbon-oxygen planet. The facts are built into the structure of cells. Only blood cells are different from one humanoid race to the next. Blood cells are the only way you can identify crossbreeding between planets.
I was just interested in the similarity of facial bone structures between some Earth races and those of Manco.
I will show you.
Grobe rushed out and rushed back in carrying a human hand. Leave it to Crobe to hack off a hand when all he wants is a little blood. He waved it in the air.
An Earthman! Now I put some of his blood here, like so. Now give me your hand. Well, not just a finger, just a little prick. So.
Hey!
Huh?
Sultan, do you kidnap Earth people?
Well, no. These are old vehicle accident victims, just here for study and deep freeze.
Come. Look in this microscope and compare. You will see there is no crossbreeding between Manco and Earth.
They are very similar. Take a look.
An unqualified observer. What? Maybe that wasn't an Earthman. Well, it was tagged as an Earthman. Oh, sit there and dream up your fables.
Grove beckoned me into his office.
There's a problem with his height at his age. He's 6 feet, 2 inches tall. The average height on Earth for this type is only 5 feet 8.5. Although he's 28 years old, Earthmen live a shorter lifespan. He'll appear to be about 90. And now he can subsection his legs and arms, take out a little bone here and there, and shrink his skull. Officer Grease, what is the matter?
Heller somehow arranged to get me back to the room and cleaned up. He ordered a new uniform because I had ruined the other. I was sicker than I had ever been in my life, with no explanation for it. But it had started in Crobe's area. As night came on, I resolved never to go near him again, and somehow I suddenly, miraculously, recovered. I was just feeling like getting up and around when...
Officer Grease, this is for you.
2 of Commander Snell's guards rolled a huge box into the room on a wheeler dolly. I couldn't guess who it was from or what it could be. I opened the top. I stumbled back against a chair, then a table, then into a shelf, sending things crashing as the broad head of a Zitab rose higher and higher out of the box. The gaping fangs dripped venom as the deadly reptile looked for a target to strike at. And then, behind it, the Countess Crack rose up out of the box like an apparition, dressed all in flaming red.
Oh, sorry, Sultan, but we had to get her up here somehow, and I couldn't resist the joke.
She stepped out and closed the Zitab up in the box with a "You be good now" wag of her finger as Heller helped me up, and the guards rolled the box out, still laughing. Some joke. Here was a Spitios prisoner out of the depths in the upper levels. 3 heads would roll if it was found out. The 2 of them soon had their heads together over a canister of sparkle water, goo-gooing like school kids over the legend of Prince Cacalzia from the Atalanta province of the planet Manco and his Earth colony that he supposedly had named Atlantis. And Heller said the poles of Earth had shifted around that time and melting ice caps must have drowned the colony out. By the time it came out that both Heller and Crack were also from the Atalanta province of Manco, I was about as welcomed there as death. At length, Heller took me aside and asked if there weren't a cubicle down the hall where I could sleep. As I gathered up some things and went out the door, I heard Countess Crack whispering, "You'll have to be gentle with me. I've never had a man before."
As I wearily laid down on the hard and dirty floor of an adjoining cubicle and fell asleep with my cap for a pillow, listening to the rhythm of creaking springs and "Oh, Jet! Oh, Jet! Oh, Jet! Oh, Jet! Oh, Jet!" I wondered dismally what was going to become of Mission Earth. Heller and the Countess Crack became virtually inseparable. 5 days went by with the same routine. Days they spent in the training room, nights she was smuggled to my room. My urgency to get Heller off Voltar was growing, and there were things to be done that were not getting done. One was to get Heller implanted with a body bug that would allow me to monitor his movements everywhere on Earth. It was my only hope. Since Lumbar had made me responsible for keeping an eye on the base commander in Turkey, I would have to run Heller from there, and Heller would be operating thousands of miles away in the United States. Yet every time I thought about getting him on an operating table, for some reason, I became violently ill. I had to do something. I got on the computer to see if I could find some flaw, some indiscretion, some fracture to use in controlling Heller. The only thing that came up was that he gambled on occasion. Well, that was enough for me. I went and found Commander Snells and set him up with some loaded dice. He didn't want any part of cheating Heller, but a blast stick pointed at his head seemed to bring him to his senses. I had to stake him, though, to match Heller's roll, and he said Heller had at least 5,000 credits. So we went to the finance office, and I drew a whole year's advance. I knew Heller didn't have a chance. I gave Snells the money and the loaded dice and sent him to the room to start the game. In the meantime, I had a message that Dr. Crow wanted to see me. The second I started down the tube toward the biological section, I started to feel pain and nausea. Crow was in his office, scraping cells from a 7 foot.
You have not brought that young officer back here for bugging. Lumbar Hist ordered me to fix him up. Can you think of any reason why I shouldn't report this to Hist?
He continued to scrape with one hand while he held the other out on his desk, palm up. My stomach gave a new turn. I feebly pulled out 35 credits. He took them, tossed them aside, pointed his gummy scalpel at me.
Perhaps you don't understand the danger to me personally if I don't carry out Lumbar Hist's orders. 200.
I only have 155 more.
That will do for now.
Oh, I was too sick to argue or even think. I just wanted to get out of there. I would be rich before the night was out, so I handed over all the money. By the time I got back to the room, all feelings of nausea and sickness had left me, probably in happy anticipation of Snell's winnings. It took me a moment to register the scene. Snells was tense. Beads of sweat were standing out on his forehead. The pile of money in front of Heller was huge, while Snell's money was very low. His money, my money!
Hi, Sultan. Commander Snells here talked me into a friendly little game. Snells, I shouldn't tell you to stop playing since I'm winning, but you ought to think about it. I had no intention of wiping you out.
I'm going to bet it all.
No, don't do that.
Oh, yes, it's my only chance. Money for my honey, booze for my cruise, fly them over 50 and don't let this spacer lose.
I could tell he was setting the loads in the dice to come up all 12s for an unbeatable 72. He rolled 16! Heller picked up the dice and tossed them on the table.
49. I'm awfully sorry.
The color had drained out of Snell's face. I was paralyzed as Heller raked over the last of my next year's worth of pay. I was broke, penniless, destitute.
This is an awful lot of money. You'd better take it back.
I silently screamed, "Take it!
Take it, you idiot!
Fast gotten, fast gone. Thank you for a nice game, Officer Heller."
My pleasure.
I was on the ramparts of Spitios the next day. I was just contemplating throwing myself over the tower and into the chasm when Snells walked up, and I contemplated throwing him over first. I wondered if he'd bounce. I went all over Camp Kill after I left last night and found a dice expert to tell me what went wrong. These are thunder dice. The sticky stuff inside warms up if they get shaken a lot and the pellets won't stick. You're never supposed to use them for more than a few throws. Wish you'd told me that going in. At least Heller never found out they were crooked. We were lucky. 5,000 credits lucky. I said a silent, blasphemous funeral prayer and sent the dice sailing. I went down to the training room to check on Heller's progress. Several of the Countess Crack's trained acts were there, and everyone was gathered round the prostrate form of a brutish yellow giant stretched out on the floor.
What in the name of...
Sultan. Tried to kill his trainer. He'll be thinking
He's
of...
a cold-blooded murderer. The apparatus told me I had to train. Jethro saved my trainer's life.
Well, I'm off to get cleaned up. I'll see you in a bit.
Sultan, sit down here with me. Sultan, I need your help. I've run out of things to teach him. Can't you please get permission for me to teach him espionage? He'll be in danger without it.
Sure, I thought, you conniving bitch. So you can hold the mission up longer. Here was my enemy. Over her shoulder, I could see the great lumbering yellow giant pulling himself up off the floor. I smiled. Countess, Lombard gave very definite instructions. The hideous giant was stumbling towards us.
But it's a very vital subject for the mission.
He was right behind her. Maybe he would kill her and end all my problems. He reached out and smacked her shoulder, spinning her chair around to face him.
Keep that Jethro Heller away from me, or I'll break his neck.
Her foot moved so fast I hardly saw it, but the giant doubled over and fell backwards onto the floor.
Don't you dare talk about Jethro that way.
A juggler's razor-sharp sword lay near the giant. He picked it up and rushed at her, screaming as the broad, gleaming blade whistled toward her neck. She twisted to the right as the blade fell with thump, and her hand flashed against his jaw with a sickening crunching bone. He roared and fell back as she spun and struck again and again. Over and over she pounded him like a remorseless machine. Then she leapt in the air and her glittering brass boot slammed into the giant's face with a shuddering thud. He shot backwards like an arrow and his head hit an electric shock machine with a sound like an exploding melon. He didn't move again. Her assistants came up.
Take him and get him patched up.
No need. He's dead.
Well, that will teach him not to threaten Jethro.
I don't know how I got out of there. I simply found myself in the tubes, flashing away from her. I halted before turning the corner to my room, trying to calm myself. I had to get Helen out of Spitios. If the Countess Crack had any inkling of what was planned for Heller, what she had just done to that giant would be mild compared to what she would do to me. Tugging at my tunic, breathing as naturally as I could, I entered the room.
Oh, hi, Sultan. Have you been exercising?
Jethro, has it occurred to you that this place is very dirty? You deserve better. In fact, you finished your studies. There's really no reason to stay here.
You know, Sultan, you're right. This fortress is awful.
Officer Grease, time to get going. The light shined in my face. I looked at my watch. It was half an hour before dawn. The place was a jumble of sound and motion. Heller was dressed and perky. Commander Snells and his men were packing and moving boxes.
Pack 'em up, move 'em out! Well, look who's awake. Grab your hat, Sultan, you're all packed.
I soon found myself seated next to Heller in my Airbus, nursing a cup of hot jolt and trying to clear away the fog of sleep. Were we really on our way? My driver, Ski, was in back, perched on boxes and baggage. Heller drove the Airbus like a madman, leaning back, one hand loosely on the wheel stick. It was time to take charge. The apparatus freighter terminal is just to the southwest of Government City. You can slow down a little, you know. The next freighter doesn't leave till mid-afternoon.
Freighter? Sultan, are you telling me our mission ship is a freighter?
Well,
that'll take us 6 weeks to get to Earth.
Well, no. I was just suggesting that. Actually, we don't have a mission ship. He pulled the Airbus up into a controlled hover and perched his red cap back a little further on his head.
You all right back there, Ski?
First rate, Officer Heller, sir.
He never called me, sir, the cretin.
Well, we better do something about this, Sultan. And I think I know just the thing. Hang on.
Whoa! Ow! Dropping like a rock from thousands of feet, pulling up short in the last seconds to touch down the big painted X of the landing pad. I followed him toward the hangar.
Hello, Commander Krupp!
A grizzled old space officer came out of the little office in the hangar, a thundercloud scowl on his face. Then he burst into pure radiance. Jethro, haven't seen you in ages. How you been, boy? They came together like colliding spaceships, pounding each other on the back. What can I do for you, Jet?
Here are my orders. I'm shopping for a ship. All right to go up?
Sure, boy, anything you need. There was a giant crane hoist used to lift and move heavy machinery, mounted in the faraway ceiling of the hangar 500 feet above us. The operator, sitting up in his cab, looked like a mere speck.
Hello, the hoist! Stand by to lift!
Heller pulled gloves from his pocket and handed one to me absently as he pulled on the other one and stepped onto the hoist hook. He gestured me forward. I realized with a sinking horror that he wanted me on there with him. I pulled on the glove and put my foot on the hook.
Take her to the top!
I left my stomach on the hangar floor. We zipped to the top and stopped suddenly, the spring of the cables making us bounce. I foolishly opened one eye to see Heller swinging by one hand, nonchalantly looking this way and that, with one leg dangling out over 500 feet of empty space, hard concrete, and the pointed noses of hundreds of old ships below.
Take her to the right!
Hey, Heller, let's just take a freighter.
Oh, no. We must have a proper mission ship.
All right, I agree. Anything, just take us down.
Well, open your eyes and help me. That's it. Over there.
Heller signaled, palm down, and we plummeted. The cables screamed, and we dropped so fast my feet slipped off the hook. Heller held my arm and stepped lightly off just before the steel heel banged onto the hangar floor. I sank down on the concrete. Then I looked up to find Heller in absolute ecstasy.
He was literally stroking the sides of the ugliest, dustiest, dumpiest excuse for a ship I ever hoped to see. It was only about 110 feet tall. Commander Krupp pulled up in a car. "Oh no, Jethro, I love you, boy. You don't want that."
Oh, don't you see? It's Tug 1! Sultan, it's all engines. It's the fastest thing in this universe.
Which is why it's right here to stay. What is the matter with that ship, Commander Krupp? It's dangerous, that's what. Those will-be-was time drives aren't even made anymore. They have a nasty habit of picking up more energy than they can waste and blowing themselves into space dust. Well then, there'll be no Tug 1 on this mission. By that night, Heller had Tug 1 back at the apparatus base. It had been cleaned from nose to tail section by apparatus crews that ordinarily wouldn't clean their own nails. But Heller had been passing out golden credits, my money, left and right into sweaty palms, and he had swarms of apparatus thugs falling all over themselves to do his bidding. I began to see that the man hadn't an ounce of scruples or decency. He had railroaded me into putting 500,000 credits of the mission allocation into the purchase of the tug, and had been making calls all afternoon, lining up another 500,000 in refit contractors. Heller, what are you doing? You've ordered work on this ship that will take weeks.
Why, Sultan, Tug 1 will save us time. You were going to take a freighter. Relax, Sultan. Have some top and enjoy yourself a bit.
I looked round to find Commander Snells marching in a squad of 8 men to guard the ship. They were in perfect formation, dressed in uniforms and riot helmets like a crack precision drill team. These were apparatus riffraff, normally drunk, mangy criminals. What had gotten into them? More of Heller's influence, no doubt.
Squad! Halt! Ground hands! Halt! Inside sentry, take your post.
One of the guards marched out of formation, up the steps past me and into the ship. I started down the steps. Wait a minute. Something about that. I ran back up the steps. Heller stood in the passageway, freshly groomed and in a powder blue lounge suit. The guard stood in front of him at attention, then reached up and took off the helmet. A mass of silky hair tumbled down.
Why, Sultan, you look like you've seen a ghost.
They hugged as though they'd been apart for years.
Darling, I've got to show you this beautiful ship. Come up here to the control deck. It's all custom.
I tagged along to see, too. Heller was like a kid with a new toy, but frankly, I couldn't see the attraction.
Modeled with all sound insulated. Now, close your eyes.
She did. I didn't. We were at a door toward the back.
Open.
Oh, Jet.
The door opened at his command, and we were looking down an aft passageway lined and trimmed with solid silver. He took us in. The bedroom was ornate gold and silver with cavorting wood nymphs. In the dining salon were solid gold plates, vases, and trimmings. There was a sleek gymnasium complete with a 3-dimensional light illusion duelist for fight training. Every wall of the adjoining lounge was a black shining expanse like glass that changed to surrounding scenes of winter, spring, summer, and fall when Heller merely said each word.
This whole rear section of the ship is keyed to my voice only. Nothing will open or work except on the frequencies and harmonics of my voice, unless I change it. Don't worry, darling, I'll put your voice into the bank.
What about mine? I'll be on this ship with you.
Heller just looked at me,
Then he took Countess Crack's hand and led her into the dressing room. He opened the door to a glittering array of gowns and dresses in filmy, intricate silver lace and the richest materials in the empire.
Jet, you are trying to spoil me. And you're winning.
Let's go forward and let the lady get out of that uniform.
I won't be long.
You have your nerve. You had no intention of starting out. You just wanted a fancy ship to play around in.
Well, Sultan, you did say Spidio's was uncomfortable. Have some sparkle water?
I'll see you tomorrow. I was utterly broke, and I had nowhere to go. I hadn't eaten all day. My driver, Ski, was asleep in my Airbus, and I cuffed him awake. I tried to beat some money out of him, but he was as broke as I was. I gave up and had him drive me to my town hotel room in the slums of Government City, near the apparatus offices. I was bone weary, and at least I could get some sleep.
Mealy!
Where's my money?
Why, Mealy? You know I always pay you.
Always means never. You apparatus scum are all alike.
Open my door, you...
Here's your door.
She ran in and started gathering up my things from the floor. Her knife-scarred face twisted in rage. She flung torrents of clothes, boots, and bedclothes out the window.
Now get out.
What?
I am gonna tell every landlord in the city you haven't paid a rent for a year.
Oh,
Out, you!
for some reason, she had never liked me. Botch dragged me off the top of my desk the next morning. Botch had never liked me either. Riffraff like the rest.
You know you're not supposed to sleep in here.
Whose office is it, anyway?
Botch stood there, stooped there, I should say, with a yard-tall stack of papers, trying not to sneer, two wild tufts of grey standing out on either side above his ears.
You might drop by once in a while to validate some papers. You do remember how to push your identiplate against a piece of paper, don't you? Start with these.
Well, you might bring me some of the office hot jolt.
The office funds are depleted. We heard you were transferred and had a party. Then we heard you were reinstated and held a wake. We are broke. There is no jolt, hot or otherwise. Now stamp.
I stamped. In stamping, I found that there were unallocated funds for office renovation, and I thought I had found salvation. I called a contractor out to my office and instructed him to put a secret escape hatch in my office bathroom. The toilet window being above a 500-foot drop straight down to the River Vile, I could break the glass if ever chased in there, then escape through the secret hatch to the roof. It would look like I had leaped into the raging river, and they wouldn't even bother to look for the body. I placed the order and told him to hand over a 20-credit kickback. I would eat. Then he told me kickbacks couldn't be paid till the work was done. I wouldn't eat. He left. I stamped some more, and my stomach hurt from hunger. The thought of going to the hangar to check on Heller made my stomach hurt worse. I thought I ought to just really dive out the toilet window and get it all over with before someone else did it for me. That's about when I started hallucinating. I sat there, thinking I was in the cavern offices of the secret base in Turkey, on Blito P3, stamping manifests of shipping orders for shipments to Lumbar Hist back on Voltar. A Turkish dancing girl came through the door and danced suggestively towards me, carrying a tray brimming with money and delicious Turkish baklava. I reached for... I really was hallucinating. I knew I was going crazy. Now, I knew this was all very simple. I had studied Earth comic books at the apparatus school, and although I had mistaken Bugs Bunny for a true Earth being, my instructor, after a good laugh, had pointed out that it was Elmer Fudd who represented the true shape and behavior of Earth people, not bugs. And when he told me that there wasn't much difference between Earth's comic books and their technical books, I read voraciously. That's when I found the gold mine. It's a subject that they call on Earth psychology. It is to that rare gem that I owe my remarkable ability to handle people. It's my trade secret. It is, in truth, a government monopoly on Earth, but is taught in their universities. Like Bugs Bunny, it teaches you how to get around anybody. It's based on the premise, well known to Lumbar and to me, that everyone is evil, that sentient beings are animals and have no souls. And it was only my thorough understanding of this wonderful subject that allowed me to know that the Turkish girl was merely a psychogenic hallucination based on fulfillment denial. From that, I was able to analyze that I wanted to get the hells out of there. I wasn't any less hungry, but at least I had a proper label for it. I reached for another baklava cake that wasn't there and began to wonder darkly how I was going to make it on Earth without knowing what was happening on Voltar. What would Bugs Bunny do? Then I had it. Endau. Endau was the crossroads of information between Lumbar and the Grand Council. And Endau had a weakness. I pulled out my blackmail folders and shortly had 2 Section 451 clerks standing in my office looking slightly amused and tolerant. The 2 boys were Tula and Oder, but were known by all as Tutu and oh dear.
I hereby appoint you both as alternate couriers to Blito P3 to bring me all the papers I have to validate on a regular 3-month basis, the interval of a round trip to Earth. On your alternate off time at home, you will each take messages to Lord Endau and will pretty yourselves up so that each of you by turns becomes his lover. And you will pump him for all information about Blito P3 and bring it to me on your run.
But what if Lord Endau refuses to slip into the trap?
You both love your mothers, boys, now don't you?
Oh, you wouldn't order our mothers murdered?
I flipped the knife section knife from its sheath at the back of my neck and threw it, quivering, into the floor between them. This, I knew, added the very important phallic symbol. They fell into each other's arms, weeping. I had Botch drag them out. Psychology is a wonderful thing. No wonder Earth governments use it exclusively. I reached for another baklava. At midnight, lying on my desk in the darkened office, I was rudely awakened by the noisy entrance of a Manco devil. They are peculiar to the planet Manco, dark red with horns and long spiked tails.
What is your name?
Sultan Grease, what's that form you're writing on?
The form to find out if you know.
About what?
That is what we are trying to establish.
But how can I answer unless I know what I don't know? He smiled devilishly and twitched his tail. The toilet door opened and the whole crew from Heller's original scouting mission came in. They must have come through the trap door that was being cut tomorrow. Snells had somehow sneaked them out of the bowels of Spitios.
He doesn't know what he isn't supposed to know.
We won't tell unless we're bribed.
The crew began to beat me with electric whips, and I turned to the devil. But the devil had changed to Lumbar Hist. I tried desperately to draw my stun gun, but my arm was paralyzed. The whips stung again, and Lumbar was Dr. Krob. Pain wrenched my stomach. Then the patrol craft crew vanished, and the devil was in his chair again.
We come to the matter of pay.
I need more pay. I'm penniless.
But I am here to collect the bill for this interview.
The devil's pen became a flaming torch, and he rammed it again and again into my stomach. I screamed and tried to draw my stun gun again, but my arm wouldn't move. Then Tug 1 came crashing through the wall and exploded in mid-space. Then the devil was there again. He had 2 leopard-tigers on leashes and was barely able to hold them back.
If you find out, these animals will rip your guts out.
I'll pay your bill! I flung open a file cabinet and threw huge handfuls of counterfeit money at him, and as they fluttered to the floor, the room was empty. With a groan, I crawled back onto the desk. Then I sat up like a shot. No, the torch hadn't scorched the secret papers I was carrying for the Emperor, and I fell thankfully into a troubled sleep. About mid-morning, Botch dragged me off the desk again. He seemed a long way off. He had a stack of papers.
Hey, he looks sick. His forehead is hot.
You better call a doctor. Otherwise he might just lie here and die and stink the place up worse than it is.
I came round again after what may have been minutes or hours. A doctor was there taking my temperature. Said it was a case of diplodocus infernum, and that I'd break out in black spots that would suppurate. He started writing out a long list of pills and powders and wonder drugs.
We can't get any of that stuff. He doesn't have any money.
The doctor tore up his list and slammed out of the office.
Now see what you've gotten me into.
And he slammed out of the office too. I was probably unconscious for a long time. When I came to, the late afternoon sunlight was streaming in. My driver's ski was kneeling next to me, shaking me.
I know you told me not to go near Heller, but I thought I'd better when I found out how sick you were. He was real sorry to hear you were sick. He gave me some money and told me what to do. He realized you probably hadn't had anything to eat or drink and said that could make somebody real sick, so he sent this whole case of sparkle water and 10 pounds of sweet buns. He would have come himself, but thought you'd get mad, this being a secret mission and all. I took a cut of the money and gave it to Mealy, your landlady. So you got a place to sleep now. Here, you better drink. Heller said so.
I decided not to kill Heller today. For 2 days after my nightmares, Botch waited hopefully for me to break out in black spots that would then suppurate. I stamped his papers, slept a lot, stamped his spots, and soaked up sparkle water and sweet buns. But I was nagged by a premonition of horror. There was something that... Then I had it. The patrol craft that Hist had stolen when he kidnapped Heller's crew. There had been no reports of a patrol craft crashed in the Great Desert. What had become of that craft and the kidnapped crew? If word got out what happened to Heller's crew, it would start a civil war with me in the middle. I made myself fight down the surging terror. What had the crew said in the dream? They wanted to be bribed. In a flash, I realized they knew something about Heller, but I had no money to bribe anyone. Then a bell rang in my head, and I burst out laughing. Botch peered in with his bulbous eyes, shook his head, and left. Counterfeit money! Botch, tell anybody who calls that I've gone hunting to recover my health. I was not without resources. I had some very provocative information on the head of the provocation section, Razator. He had raped and murdered the mistress of the commander of the Death Battalion. I had given Razator copies of the pictures, and he knew I had the originals. I practically owned the provocation section. Hello, Rosator. Met any nice girls lately?
What do you want?
Oh, just the run of the place. Take me to the bait room. We passed the racks and racks of uniforms and disguises and came at last to the bait office. They had fake everything. Jewels, gold, identaplates, certificates, IDs, and money. Toilet paper, they called it down there. Passing it is a death penalty. I picked up packs of 5s, 10s, 20s, 50s, and 100s.
You trying to get the whole platoon executed?
Just give me something to carry it in. He handed me a magic bottom case. Before leaving, I took some cans from a shelf marked poisoned food. You're always so helpful, Raza. I'll be back.
Oh, I'll count the seconds.
I stuffed the bulk of the counterfeit money into a hideaway in the Airbus as we flew over the great desert toward Spidios, and put a few bills in my very empty wallet, just for appearance. I resolved to see if the crew had ever arrived at Spidios, then search for the wreck. We landed at Camp Kill, and ski ground-wheeled along the cluttered streets of the slummy place to the red light district. I went in at a seedy-looking brothel for the camp soldiers, if you can call them that. 400 pounds of fat slumped over the edges of a half-reclined chair wearing a dirty towel. I want a mute for fortress bribery.
It can be arranged.
She looked at me with contempt and held out a filthy hand. I took out my wallet and waved a counterfeit 50. She rearranged the globs into an ingratiating smile, snatched the 50, and positively crooned over it. A couple of hags dragged out a dirty, bedraggled girl who was nonetheless sort of pretty. Her larynx had been cut out. There are 20 men involved. She may get pretty used.
Killer. We got hundreds of them. How about a little something for you, dearie?
I got the hells out of there. I took the girl by zip bus through the tunnel that connected Camp Kill with Spidios. The barricade guards had fun feeling her all over for hidden weapons. I was surprised her eyes were tearing. Oh well, riffraff like the rest. When we finally reached the tubes leading into the stinking depths of Spidios, she found the will to fight then, tooth and nail. Finally, with no small degree of trouble, I located the crew from Heller's patrol craft in Block 5 of the military section. Water was trickling somewhere, and some large type of vermin leaped off of a skull on a stone ledge and scurried into the gloom. I hid the prostitute in an empty cell. I expected to find the men hopelessly beaten down, but they were cocky and rude. From the bones in their cage, they had been living off the vermin and the black water that ran down the blacker walls. I tried to buy the secret information about Heller that, according to my dream, they were withholding, but they kept singing his praises each time I passed some more counterfeit bills to them. Finally, I pulled the cans of poisoned food from the bag, and at that moment the girl's curiosity got the better of her, and she stuck her head round the corner. That got them. They promised that if I would push the girl and the bag of food through the slot under the bars, they would tell me something very important about Heller, something that could save my life. That was it. The girl kicked and fought until one of the fleet spacers whispered something in some off-world tongue, and she slithered under the bars all on her own. Then the leader of the group, Soames, came up to the bars and motioned me over very close as I would come. And what he said was this, that if Jethro Heller ever found out what had happened to them, he would kill me with his bare hands. I turned and stomped back up the halls of Spidios, ignoring their catcalls and cries of drunk. The hell's with them! As soon as they ate that food, they'd all be as dead as they richly deserved.
We spent the afternoon crisscrossing the great desert, looking in vain for the wreck of the patrol craft. All I needed was lumbar hiss coming down on me with a, "Why didn't you take care of that?" As dusk came on, we found ourselves crossing over a pass between icy peaks of the towering Blake Mountains. Ski had been whining about getting back to Government City, but I was in no hurry. Too many things back there had a tendency to blow up. Tug 1, the Countess Crack, lumbar hissed.
Somebody followed us over that last range.
Land on that grassy plateau above that high cliff. Nearby were some caves in the rock, and an animal path leading down to the valleys. Night came on fast, so we built a fire and cooked some songbirds I shot. The peace and quiet was a soothing respite. I had just leaned forward to pull another thriller from the fire when... I dove for the cover of the rocks at the cliff edge, and Ski plowed into me, almost sending me over the side. We both faked dwindling screams as we scrambled low for the caves, praying it would make our attackers think they had scored a hit and we had gone over the cliff edge. It became eerily silent. I made Ski stand up to look, and he wasn't shot, so I went out. The Airbus was consumed in fire, the flames sending grotesquely dancing shadows hundreds of feet up the walls of rock around us. We were hopelessly stranded in the Blake Mountains. Goodbye, Tug 1. Goodbye, Countess Crack. Goodbye, Heller. I was looking forward to happy years in a wilderness full of game. All my problems were solved. I spent 3 blissful weeks living off the land, though somewhat marred by the bumbling Ski, carping every step of the way under his burden of sparkle water, the weight of recent kills, and the 20-foot section of Airbus frame that he insisted on bringing along. It had the vehicle identification number on it, and he wanted it to trade in on a new Airbus if we were ever found. He had the most annoying habit of tumbling down the steep paths time after time, and I felt he was cursing me under his breath as I wandered along, pausing to admire the view, to savor the redolent perfume of the air, or to take a shot at some songbird. I wrote him off as incurable. It all came to an abrupt end as I awoke one dawn to the hard and cold reality of a hunting blast gun prodding my chin. It was Lord Mock's game warden, and though it took the fastest talking that Ski's nimble peasant lips were capable of, we were spared being hung on the spot as poachers, and by the next light we were on a supply plane bound for Government City. Ski was fairly bouncing with joy. For me, looking back, I would have been better off if I were hanging in a tree there yet. When I walked into my office, I noticed that the work on the secret escape hatch in the bathroom had been finished. Flames finished while I was gone, but the bill I knew wouldn't get paid for 6 months. Typical apparatus. So I still wouldn't have a kickback coming. Botch came stooping in.
Oh, it's you. Why do you have to keep coming around upsetting things?
What? I've been missing for 3 weeks.
Well, the least you could have done was arrange to get your work taken care of. That pile wants stamping.
I stamped with a vengeance. Then I noticed, Botch, these forms I just stamped are blank. You haven't filled half of them out. Old age, Botch. He came in and snatched them up. I grabbed my hat. I had to find out what had been going on while I was away, as much as the thought of going near Tug 1 pained me. When we got to the apparatus base, a fleet skyhauler was maneuvering a massive brass cylinder onto a trundle dolly near Tug 1. Alarm shot through me. When we finally got down, I found Snells near the crane operator, watching as Heller rode the cylinder hundreds of feet into the air and guided it into an opening in the upper hull plates of Tug 1. A sign on the side of the cylinder said, "Danger! Highly explosive, do not open." Snells, have there been any other fleet ships round here?
Boy, that Heller is something, isn't he? Nobody else would get on that thing. Nobody in their right mind, anyway.
Snells, have things been coming in from the fleet?
Just those long boxes they put down in the lower hold. Haven't you seen them? Man, I can't figure out what he wants with a spare time converter. One's dangerous enough. You wouldn't catch me getting on that tug.
The cylinder had been lowered into place, and Heller was riding the empty crane hook over toward us.
Yeah, that's it. Right over there. Oh, say, Sultan, those earlier Blitto P3 surveys you gave me were missing cultural notes and observations. See if you can find them, will you? Well done, Crane Master. Thanks. All right, let's get those hull plates out and dismantle now. And we'll take
He had acted for all the world like he was picking up a conversation that had been interrupted a half an hour ago. I trudged wearily up the stairs of my slum city hotel that night to the stench of my littered room and lay in my broken bed staring into the dark. I had been gone 3 weeks, and not once all day had a single person had the decency to say, "Where have you been?" But they would pay. All of them. When Lumbar took power and I was his deputy, oh, yes, all the scum and riffraff would pay. Next morning, at the apparatus hangar, everything was in a bustle. Heller had crews rushing here and there in brightly colored uniforms, making a swirling scene of spattered hues and industry. A fleet truck pulled in, and 6 fleet spacers hopped out, unloading a long box, and trotted with it into the tug, while Heller untangled a squabble between the spacers and apparatus guards. I sidled very inconspicuously into the tug. I looked round cautiously, then scurried down the ladder into the lower hold. There were 6 long boxes down there, heavily fastened. What the devils did Heller have here? What new menace was I facing? Afraid to be caught, I scrambled back up the ladder when...
Hi, Sultan.
Heller reached down and helped me up the ladder, then stood there looking at me curiously, searchingly.
Sultan, I've got the feeling that you've been avoiding me lately. Oh. I must have said or done something that offended you. If so, I'm very sorry. Listen, we're in this thing together, and I want to make a go of it. You know, Sultan, I've got it. You owe me a dinner for your promotion, right? I'm calling in the debt. You have your Airbus here an hour after dark, and we'll all fly away to some fine nightclub, and you'll buy us dinner. That will make peace and cheer you up. See you at dinner.
Dinner. I didn't have a credit to my name. If I tried to pass the counterfeits in my wallet, I would be promptly arrested and executed. I turned and looked at the airtight door at the rear of the ship. There were gold and silver vases and plates in there. I tiptoed up to it. Open. 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 Open? Open!
You calling me?
No. Just leaving. That night, as we lifted high up over the twinkling panorama of Voltar's cities under the stars, the streaks of early evening traffic made intricate patterns below, and for a moment I almost forgot my troubles. The Countess Crack was radiant, her tresses like a halo, her dinner gown a pale orange with ripple lights that pulsated to her voice. I noticed that we weren't heading toward Joy City at all. We were headed for Posh Hills. Heller, where are you taking us?
We're picking up a dinner companion for you.
Heller was flying us steadily in toward a domed home that had 2 acres of ground on the tip of the tallest skyscraper. When he set us down, a hooded, cloaked figure sped out from under a darkened tree, sprang into the Airbus, and we zipped into the night sky. The new passenger threw off the hood with a beautiful laugh. My gods, it was Heidi Heller, the most well-known face on all of Voltar. She nodded politely to me, and then she and the Countess Crack were off into giddy schoolgirl chatter as soon as Heller had made introductions.
Oh, yes, simply mobs. Jetero, where are you taking us at such breakneck speed? Jetty knows just 2 speeds, full throttle and full throttle. He's a darling, though, isn't he?
He is a darling, though, isn't he? He's a madman trying to get us all killed.
We're going to the artistic club.
Oh, dear. That's right on Club Row. There are always reporters hanging around there looking for celebrities.
Well, we're going there because everyone wears masks. Yours are in a drawer under the seat back there. Sultan's driver, Ski, got them for us. You won't be recognized.
They pulled out the masks, laughing and giggling. Heidi's was the sexy wood nymph. Countess Crack's had large, luminous eyes and black and orange fur, the Lepertige lady. Heller was driving with one knee as he pulled 2 huge steel stars over his eyes, hardly any disguise at all. I was handed my mask. It was the buck-toothed demon, frightfully ugly. Ski has no taste. The piercing blue-white glare of the Joy City searchlights were flashing now and again across the interior of the Airbus as we made our descent.
I'm starving. Let's eat.
And eat they did. 180 credits worth. I picked at the food and watched dismally as people kept coming out of the audience to do different acts on stage. I'd settled into a kind of stupor. It couldn't be worse, or so I thought, until a spotlight hit our table.
Sultan, you go first.
Go first?
It's the artistic club, Sultan. Everyone has to perform.
Oh, they double your bill. Put on a good act, Sultan. Go.
I stumbled forward, frozen with stage fright, to be slaughtered by the mob. What could I do? Then I had an inspiration. I knew bird calls that I used to lure out songbirds when hunting. So I did the mountain thriller, the marsh hen, the meadow warbler. Silence. No response, no applause. I got quite cross.
Well, the birds like it.
I scuffled back to my seat. Every act that followed was met with, "Did the birds like it?" and screams of laughter.
Hey, you were a hit.
I tipped back another round of bubble brew and began to think that maybe I was at that. That's when I saw it. A press balcony complete with a home view camera crew. And the shadow of Lumbar Hist loomed darkly over the club. The light played across our table again, and Heller and the Countess Crack got up and did a flashy dance number like the one they'd been rehearsing, and finished with Countess Crack doing a disappearing act, only to appear beside me at the table. The home view camera had been on them the whole time. Heller ordered another round of bubble brew, and I lost track of how high the bill had climbed. Other acts went on. I watched these two idiots, Heller and Crack, as they sipped laughing from each other's canister. Lronhubbard would have them killed in an instant if they threatened to expose apparatus activities on Blito P3. The light played over our table.
I had really hoped they'd lose count. Oh, well, I guess I'd better go sing for my supper.
And when Heidi Heller reached the platform and started into her act, her body writhing and swaying, her hands suggesting far more than mere music, the tension in the air was electric. Men stopped with forkfuls of food poised halfway to their opened mouths. And then I heard the words that chilled my marrow.
Oh, my God, that's Heidi Heller.
It's Heidi! Heidi! Heidi's here!
It was bedlam in the club. Someone outside was shouting it down the street, and the back of the club started filling up with a mad crush of bodies. The home grid cameras were grinding as more pandemonium broke out, and the audience was up on its feet, surging toward the stage. Then more pressing, shouting bodies came pouring through the door. Hands were reaching for Heidi, and the place was a screaming jam as Heller jumped to his feet and pushed forward to the stage to keep her from getting mauled. He lifted her high in the air above the mob. I pulled my handgun and shot out the main spotlight.
Oh, no, the blue bottle!
No, I didn't do it to help Heller. I did it because I saw a yellow man from the restaurant coming straight toward me with the check. I turned then and blasted the main light control console. I was yanked out of the booth and dragged across the floor and through an emergency exit door into the alley. My Airbus was there. I was hurtled inside, and only then did I see who had dragged me. Countess Crack. Heller launched his sister, laughing, into the Airbus, slid behind the wheel stick, and the Airbus sprang into the air.
Thank you for a wonderful evening. Good luck to you and the Countess, Jet. I approve. Good night.
Maybe it was the bubble brew, but I felt somehow elated. I had gotten away without paying the bill, and nobody but Heidi was recognized, I supposed. When we landed at the hangar, Countess Crack was spirited off by Snells and his men, but Heller just sat there under the wheel stick.
Sultan, I think I owe you an apology. It seems I pushed this dinner off on you at a bad time. I saw the floorman pressing you for a tip, and I realized you must be a bit short, so I ducked into the manager's office and put my identiplate on a blank dinner check. I couldn't tell you in front of everyone, but I wanted you to know that you don't have to worry about going back and paying the check. Hey, it was a great party. I hope you enjoyed it. Good night.
I sat there trying not to hyperventilate. His identiplate would be news. The Grand Council would soon know we hadn't left for Earth, and Lronhubbard would be all over me. Heller was a moron. No, he was a dangerous moron. I wanted to kill him, and was instantly sick at my stomach. It was more than news. It was headlines. Gunshots imperil life of Heidi Heller. Famed brother rescues Homeview star from assassin's shots. It went on and on. I sat on a pile of scrap in a dark corner of the apparatus hangar, squinting through a pounding hangover, watching helplessly as a truck from the Educational Aids Company pulled up with some new mischief of Heller's. Heller came out all bright and alert, red racing cap pushed back on his head, and helped them carry a box into the tug. Another truck arrived from the Mineral Resources Company. I just sat and waited for the inevitable. It would come. I knew it would come. And then, with a strange other sense, I felt it behind me. It was there like an infusion of poisonous black gas.
Hello, officer. Oh! You loathsome brat. I should shoot you out of hand. It was only by the greatest good fortune that the Grand Council met today and I was able to convince them that money was holding this mission up, and not your bumbling incompetence, I was able to raise the mission allocation to 30 million credits. So be grateful.
Oh, I am very grateful.
Quiet. What are those boxes I saw being hauled in? Do you know? Of course you don't. I'm going to have to bring in a special crew so I can find out what he has in there before you miserable brat. Let him get to Earth with something that will allow him to succeed in his mission when you know very well that it must fail. Now, you haven't thought about this, of course, but you're going to have crew trouble. The royal snob will breed loyalty. So, since I have to do everything myself, I will arrange a captain and a crew for the tug. Our people.
Then he snapped me up close by the lapels and used his stinger on my leg to punctuate his speech.
Now hear me, Sultan Grease. You are going to get this mission out of here by my deadline. If not, there will be Crown Inspectors swarming all over this hangar. And you don't want that. Now get hella going. And if you don't make it by my deadline, I will take great personal pleasure in killing you with my bare hands. Unless I decide instead to turn you over to Dr. Krob.
There was only one certainty. I had to get Heller moving, and right now. To do that, I had to pry him apart from the Countess Crack. I saw him going into the tug. I straightened my tunic, checked my stun gun, and entered the airlock.
Heller, there's something you don't know.
Hey, probably whole universes I don't know.
Do you remember once almost being court-martialed because you wouldn't allow your crew to be electric shock trained?
What about it?
Crack has you fooled. You hate electric shock training. She uses nothing else. She's just a dirty cheat.
His hand cracked against my mouth, and I slid backwards down the corridor like I'd been hit by a zip bus. He was walking toward me, and from his expression, I knew he was going to kill me. I grabbed the butt of my holstered gun, and my arm would not move. I tried again, but was paralyzed in that arm. He knelt in front of me.
Be very careful of spreading lies about the Countess Crack. The first day you took me to the training room, I checked those machines. All of them. Not one had been used for years.
His eyes burned blue as gas flames as he reached slowly into his inside breast pocket. I made a frantic effort to pull my gun, but my arm would not obey. He pulled out a news sheet clipping.
I had the case looked up. This is the deathbed confession of the Assistant Lord of Education on Manco. He kidnapped her mother and forced her to train those children. Then he ran them in their crimes, using their love for Countess Crack to force them to do his bidding. He killed her mother anyway, and when the children were later caught, he framed Countess Crack, and he got off without suspicion. The children were executed. She was spirited away by the apparatus. You've been holding an innocent person for years and haven't been decent enough to tell her.
He reached toward me, certainly, I thought, to choke the life out of me as I lay helpless on the floor. He took me by the lapels and lifted me into a chair.
Here, you're bleeding a bit. Sorry I hit you. I just reacted. It's not like me. I got this clipping today. I was going to surprise her tonight and ask her to marry me. Look, we can delay this mission long enough to clear her name and arrange for a marriage. Earth won't.
No! You must not start any action to clear her name. You don't understand the legalities. She's a non-person. She's listed as dead. Legally, you can't raise the dead. You can't marry the dead. A newspaper clipping is not legal evidence, Jetro. I'm trained in these things, and you are not. Listen to me. Leave as soon as possible on this mission, and I give you my solemn oath that when we return, I'll help you, guide you through it. And believe me, without my help, you can never possibly free her and restore her to the world.
I'll think it over.
I got out of that tug as quickly as I could. I had been defenseless in the face of death. I needed a doctor, and now I went back to my Airbus, kicked Ski awake, and headed for the provocation section. There I got a tri-knife and a black speed-wheeler suit with a visored helmet. I told provocation head Rosator I probably wouldn't be bringing them back. Next stop, Slum City. We landed in the shadows of trees in what might once have been a park near the all-night juke joints that line the fetid lake of Slum City. The speed-wheelers were lined up where the young hoods had left them to go dance the night away. I pulled on the black, clinging speed-wheel suit and helmet and checked the tri-knife. When it hits bottom, the blade springs open into a narrow fan of 3 razor-edged blades. It even has a little ring on the end to help you pull it back out. What comes with it isn't pretty. I rigged it in my sleeve and stuffed a pocket with a small wad of counterfeit bills and told Ski to wait in the bus. Crouching in the dark, I soon found a speed wheel and jimmied the lock, and in a few minutes I was zipping down the Slum City Boulevard, the wheels crushing through the garbage. Finally, I found a sign that said, Dr. Kutzwitz, mental doctor, brain examinations, physiological nerve specialist, hypnotist, bowels purged. The place was grimy. On shelves against the walls were transparent bottles that held human brains and discolored liquid. I told him my name was Ip, and that I wanted some advice for a friend whose arm wouldn't work right. He put me on a reclining chair and sat on a stool next to me and listened sympathetically. He patted my hand and said he thought my friend must have been hypnotized. He had me slip on a hypno-helmet. I could hear his voice distantly droning. Then, suddenly, I heard,
You are going to hear some orders over which you will have no control. Think of Jethro Heller. Think what he looks like. The first order is that any time you contemplate hurting or harming Jethro Heller in any way, you will get a sick feeling in your stomach. The second order is that if you actively plan or agree to commit physical alteration or damage to Jethro Heller, you will become violently sick at your stomach. The third order is, if you plan or connive in hurting Jethro Heller's career, you will have nightmares, and a Manco devil will come and you will go crazy. And the fourth order is, if you ever seek to poison, strike, or draw a weapon of any kind on Jethro Heller, your arm will experience instant and total paralysis. When you wake, you will see me dancing, and these orders will go deep in your consciousness, and you will obey them utterly for eternity. You will forget all that I have said, but it will continue to have full effect. Forget. Forget.
The hypno-helmet was turned off, and it was like a sun had supernovaed in my skull. The Countess Crack! That day in the training room when she put the hypno-helmet on me to brush up my Earth languages. Damn her! She had consigned me to weeks and weeks of purest hells. All was explained. All effects were gone. Damn you, Countess Crack. See what happens to you and your darling Hela now, you. And you. Every hell's ever heard of would be lovely compared to the hells you two will be in now. I became aware of Dr. Cutzwitz watching me carefully, aware now that I had come fully around. I pulled out a 5-credit note, and that's when he made a very bad mistake. He said that 5 credits wouldn't do, Officer Grease. He wanted 5,000. When I said he didn't know anything but my name, he told me how he thought the Royal Fleet would be very interested in 20 of their spacers lying dead in Spitios. I pretended to sag. I listlessly pulled the rest of the counterfeit money from my wallet and walked over to him. As I reached out with the money, my hand did a little jerk. He was still smiling when I lunged and planted 10 inches of tri-knife in his heart. Then I grabbed the ring and yanked back, stepping aside. Guts and blood gushed out on the floor. I gathered up the counterfeit notes and wiped the blood off his coat, then ransacked the rooms and found the tapes he had made. I destroyed them. I pulled on the visored speed wheel helmet and opened the door a crack. For an instant, I thought I saw someone at the end of the hall duck out of sight. A witness? Out the window and down the wall, I silently rolled the speed wheeler into the next street. I was up at dawn, alive with the fully formulated plans of a sweet, sweet revenge. I fairly trotted down the stairs to the apparatus forgery unit in the basement. The 2 forgers flinched and moaned when they heard what I wanted. But after many false starts and looking for the right seals, I had 2 absolutely undetectable masterpieces. The forgers took the time to remind me that these, if discovered, would result in instant arrest, torture, and execution. How well I knew. How well I knew. The training room was in its usual turmoil. It had been cleaned again and stank of disinfectant, stolen from the army, no doubt. The army never thinks anything is clean unless it stinks to the heavens of germ killer. And there was dear Countess Crack.
Oh, hello, Sultan.
I have wonderful news for you. I've just come from the most glorious audience.
The Emperor? You?
Really? It's only because Jethro is so important. I just have the good fortune to be associated with him. You see, I was terribly concerned that he might be injured or harmed in some way. I really shouldn't be telling you any of this. It's the most secret of state secrets.
Oh, I promise you, Sultan, no one will hear it from me.
Well, may we sit down? Well, before dawn this morning, a Palace City air limousine came for me. I was terrified, I don't mind telling you. They brought me to the palace by a back route and through a secret door to a room that had a vast swimming bath lined with diamonds. I sat there nervously for half an hour, and then, well, I could hardly believe my eyes.
What?
There he was, Kling the Lofty, in a sparkling morning robe. I could have died. Well, His Majesty lay down on some cushions, and a couple of his yellow men began to lard him with perfumes. Then he made a gesture at a spot near him, and the escort shoved me over there. His Majesty said to me, "I have always believed that Jethro Heller was a very good man."
Oh, yes.
I know. I had the same reaction. Can you believe it? But then His Majesty said, "So there is some other reason why he is delaying his departure, and I have brought you here to tell me." I thought his next words would order me executed. And so, I'm afraid I betrayed some confidences.
What?
No,
Didn't you?
Countess, don't be alarmed. I had to tell His Majesty the real reason the mission was delayed, but this has a happy ending. Of course, His Majesty was not pleased. He said the most vast and secret affairs of state depended utterly on the successful completion of this mission. He sounded very provoked. And it occurred to me that something dreadful might happen to Jethro because he was so upset, and I can't tell you how sick, I mean literally sick, I got in my stomach at that thought. It was simply awful. Sick as I was, I knew I had to plead with him. Something was making me desperate. From some unknown wellspring, I found the courage to suggest that if Jethro Heller's immediate personal problems were resolved, the mission could go quite quickly. And now, I know why he is emperor. He immediately clapped his hands for his scribes and dictated to them. And as they finished writing and sealing, he fixed me with his eye and said, "Never let it be believed that I do not concern myself with the welfare of my officers and subjects. Part of the power of ruling must be devoted to justice." But he pointed out that one of the documents was unsigned and forcefully made me aware that this mission was important to the state beyond belief. Then he had them hand the documents to me and waved me away. I came straight here.
Well, do you have them?
I looked around cautiously, then opened my tunic and reverently drew out the forged documents. I opened the first one and held it out. Oh, how her eyes went round at the royal seals and flourishes. She read silently, her lips moving. "Know all, we, Kling the Lofty, majestic and undisputed ruler of the realm, do hereby decree that mission Blito P3, secret and vital to the realm, shall go forward with complete speed, dispatch, and expedition, without compromise or halt, etc., etc. And I do pledge our royal and inviolate word, yes."
Jethro Heller, reserving only that he shall have rapidly carried it out to complete success. He shall be attached thereafter to the royal staff of Palace City, freed from the absences and perils of the fleet.
Shh. Yes, you see? Signed by the Emperor himself.
Oh, Sultan. But you said there were 2 documents.
Ah, yes. But His Majesty promised to sign this other one only when the mission is successfully completed. I slowly unfolded the second forgery, and as she read, her eyes welled with pools of tears that slowly rolled down her flushed cheeks. After all the opening falderall, it said, "The female once known as Lysis Mome, now known as Countess Crack, by reason of a deathbed confession of the true instigator of numerous crimes, is resurrected from the dead, and is restored not only her papers and identity, but also all the lands once held by the noble family Crack. Royal permission is also granted to this said person to marry Jethro Heller, but only at such time as he has joined the royal staff on transfer from the fleet." She sat quietly, stunned, a nervous hand wiping silent tears from her mouth. "Yes, cry, you cry for your precious Jethro, who will never return from planet Earth. Oh, your expectations are as high and grand now as your snobbish nobility, aren't they, you bitch? And you think I'm still under your witch's spell. And so you see, I so need your help. If Jethro finds out about these, he may do something rash, not wanting to be transferred from the fleet, and that could raise the Emperor's wrath no end. Oh. This is an easy mission. Nothing dangerous about it at all, so you must persuade him to go quickly, complete the mission, and get back. But without letting him know about these documents.
I'll do it on one condition. If you let me hold these documents myself, I will do my best to persuade him.
It was the greatest fight of my life to keep my mouth from twisting up in a smile. It was like putting a big death stamp in the middle of her lovely forehead. There would be grave danger in that for you, a prisoner of Spitios with royal documents. The last thing in this world I want is to see Heller hurt. You know that. But if you're willing to take the risk, here.
I have to thank you, Sultan. I owe you my gratitude.
Oh, not at all. In a way, it's a relief that you have them. All the way back to Government City, I actively had to restrain myself from shouting and laughing. One word from me to search her, and she would be begging for merciful death days before they finished with her. Oh, there was still much work to be done. Physically bugging Jethro Heller so that even he didn't know it was not going to be a simple project. But what I needed first was a secret operating room. That's what made me remember the Widow Tale. I had Ski drive me to Posh Hills. The Widow Tale wasn't a bad-looking woman. About 35, a blonde with smoky blue eyes. Her lips were too slack. She had 2 big warts on her face. Her breasts were sagging. But there was nothing slack in the way she was looking at me now. She had me sit down by the heart-shaped pool of her lavish mansion in Posh Hills while she went to arrange some refreshments. Her robe caught on the corner of a chair, and she laughed lightly as it fluttered to the ground. She picked it up and slipped it back on, sort of, and went in. She was a true blue nymphomaniac, as I found out on my first visit to her house. She had once had an invalid husband, filthy rich, who had insisted on having his own mini-hospital built on a corner of the grounds so he could always be close to her. Then she had hired a petty crook to break into the hospital and slit the old geezer's throat while she was conveniently visiting her mother. She came back with the drinks, and I told her I needed to use her hospital. She said the place was at my disposal. That wasn't all that was at my disposal. She took me on a little tour.
This hospital is where my dear husband spent his last days. You will never find a bed so serviceable. You must lie down and see how soft it is.
Well, I'm sure it's just... No, Whoa!
Yes. See how very soft, soft.
Once Ski had helped me, weak-kneed, back into the Airbus, my next problem was to find someone to do the operation. I did some research and found what I needed. Just a hungry young cellologist with nowhere to go. His name was Prod Bittlestifender. We flew to the provocation section, and I got the necessary disguise as a wise old scientist. Then headed for Prod Bittlestifender's Slum City office address. The office was the rattiest in a series of dilapidations. There was no nurse. I thought the place was empty till a pile of news sheets on the couch moved. He lived there. When I announced myself as Professor Gyrant Slab, world-renowned cellologist, he stood there like a starving animal about to be thrown some meat. I told him he was needed by his government for a very secret assignment on a faraway post, and that he'd been chosen because of his high success rate in his internship. When I told him the pay was 5,000 credits a year, he nearly tore the contract out of my hand to sign it. Hunger rumbles loudly. I had him draw up 2 very important lists. One list was the supplies he would need for a test case to see if he was qualified. That test case was going to be Jethro Heller. The next list was all the supplies he would need for a small but complete hospital in a remote and very secret location. I had other plans for Dr. Prod Biddlestiffender later on Earth. When I had the two lists, I gave him the Widow Tale's address and his orders.
You are bound now by utter secrecy. Tell everyone you are leaving for the back country of the planet Fliston to work with a native tribe. Arrange it so you get no mail. Then go to this address and wait. A fine gentleman named Officer Grease will arrive shortly with your test patient. You must obey Officer Grease and no one else. Something like Fliston, the legend, a secret power in the government. Now, do you have a wrap for an old man, something you won't miss? It's chilly out and I'm frozen to the bone.
He tore the place apart till he found a ratty old coat full of holes. It had his name sewn in, which was just what I wanted. He threw it over my shoulders and helped me down the stairs. I thought for a moment that a figure ducked down behind some garbage cans. I shrugged it off. I headed for the Zanko Cellological Equipment and Supplies Company. I got in to see the president and tossed the lists that Prod Biddlestiffender had given me on his desk and told him to fill them. I padded the lists till the total was 490,000 credits and told him to double the bill and send half the total to Lumbar Hist, chief of the apparatus. Then I told him to inflate some prices to make it look like 500,000 and to hand me 10,000 credits in cash. I sat there with lordly mien, puffing on an oversized puffstick, while running clerks did my bidding. He handed me a fabric wraparound case with the 10,000. I stopped by the shipping department to tell them where to ship the stuff and picked up some spare shipping labels. Here, Ski, here's 10 credits. Now you're rich.
Now I can pay Heller back what you took. Oh, hey, somebody's been watching the Airbus. You're being shadowed.
Nonsense. Now take me to a jolt joint so I can get some breakfast. Nothing's going to spoil this marvelous day. I was still sucking sweet bun crumbs out of my teeth when we sat down at the reliable Ready-Pack Takeaway Metals Company in Power City. With the violently yellow air, the elliptical transformers, the induction fields making car controls go weird, and the trucks arriving and leaving, most who had to fly in Power City called it Profanity City. They convert metals there. I counted out 9,000 credits, and they loaded 900 pounds of gold in 9 battered ingot boxes onto the loading platform. Ski started to lift one of the boxes and stopped to give me an awful look. I gestured impatiently. It was hot and dusty, but soon a profusely sweating Ski had 9 boxes sitting on the Airbus floor. I lifted a lordly finger. To the apparatus hangar, my man. I took the spare labels from the Zanko company and pasted them all over the boxes of gold. The labels were bright red and said, "Danger! Radioactive cellological elements." Delightful. They would even glow in the dark. I counted it up in Earth terms. I would have $6,480,000 American to play around with on Earth. That would buy an awful lot of Turkish dancing girls and an awful lot of hells for Heller. Heller. He was over at Tug 1 directing a crew that was spraying absorber coat all over the hull. That would make the ship totally undetectable. Absorber coat takes all incoming waves and simply drinks them up. Absolutely no energy gets reflected, visible or invisible. I had Ski drive on the ground over to the side of the hangar. there was a different ship I was looking for at the moment. Ah, there she was. The freighter Blixo, just in from its regular run to Earth. The last of its precious cargo was being loaded into trucks as Ski drove me over, and I started into the ship to find my old friend, Captain Bowles. As I neared the airlock...
Take your neck and get these cuffs over my wrists.
He was speaking American. He was squat, muscular, with black hair, black eyes, and a swarthy complexion. Why was he conscious? I went up to the guards. I am Officer Grease. This is all very irregular. Where are your orders for this prisoner, and who signed them? The guard handed over the orders. I had signed them. Oh, well, Botch always had me signing and stamping things. The orders were to bring this man in straight up. That meant conscious and minimum duress, and right to the top for questioning. It was from one of Lombard's personal clerks. I went a little chill. I spoke in English. Is your name Gonsalmo Silva?
American? Ah, you speak American. What the hell is this? What the Jesus H. Christ am I doing in this barn full of flying saucers?
Please, is your name Gonsalmo Silva?
I demand you call the United States Consul right now. I know my rights. You get the United States Consul down here right now, Buster, before I decide to really put your in a fire. I'm going to write my congressman about this. Hear me?
Since he obviously wasn't going to answer, I gestured for the guards to take him to the waiting air van. Lombard has his reasons. I went on into the Blixo and found Captain Bowles in the captain's salon, unwinding after his trip. He was happy enough to see me. I wanted a pass to get 20 cases of smuggled scotch and a black girl he had bought through the guards and into Joy City. It would bring him quite a haul, which meant he really owed me one, which was exactly what I wanted. I told him about Tutu making the next trip with him, that Tutu was man-crazy, but was carrying confidential material of interest to the state and had to be kept locked up for the whole trip, away from the rest of the crew. Bowles understood. He knew how spacers could get on a long space journey. I told him that a scientist named Prod Biddlestifender would also be on board, would be on a secret mission, and also was not to talk to anyone. He nodded wisely, so I explained that there would be a shipment of cellological equipment and supplies coming from the Zanko company that would need to go with the scientist. And then I got my radioactive boxes, the ones filled with my gold, unloaded from my Airbus and into a lead-lined vault in the freighter for the next run to Earth. Well, I had Ski do it. After another shopping trip to the provocation section, we flew up to 10,000 feet. I had down-slanted my eyes after the fashion of a Fliston race's upper class. I put in dark eye shifters for a sinister look, then pulled on a close-cropped black wig and struggled into the custard-yellow uniform of Army intelligence. I admired myself in the pull-down mirror. A snappy, handsome aristocrat. Timp Snap, grade 13, demon ace of Fliston's Army intelligence.
You going someplace to get shot?
If I believed for a moment that that was a hopeful note I heard in your voice, I would execute you on the spot.
Yeah, but I'm driving. Where to?
The Dirt Club, Joy City, South End. I packed the civilian suit I'd picked out into a little kit bag and carefully checked all my weapons. A blade gun, 2 blast sticks, and a knife-section shiv. We landed and parked the Airbus near the Dirt Club, and I sent Ski off to entertain himself till the next morning. I was on my own now, starting the most touchy and dangerous part of my intricate, clever plan. I had to get the bugging devices I needed for Heller, and to do that I had to enlist the help of an Army supply officer. They're the only ones who can purchase sensitive devices. The Dirt Club is 15 stories and covers 20 acres, an endless circus day and night. You shouldn't bring your sister here. I wandered from room to room, and finally, in a dim corner of the bunker room, I saw what I was looking for, the grasping fist of supply. The guy wearing it was sort of slopped over a dummy desk, snoring drunk. I sat down next to him and pushed my hat back. No easy job, this one. A waitress came over, dressed like a mail dispatch rider, but without pants. I ordered sparkle water for myself and an oversized canister of Jolt for my friend. I frisked him. Colonel Rajabas Stinkins, Voltar Raiders, Section of Supply. I pocketed his identiplate. He was beefy, much given to lard. I found some just-issued divorce papers and photos of 5 children. So that was why the binge. With my skill at Earth psychology, I was able to diagnose it in a minute. Drowning your sorrows, pal?
Who's drowning their sorrows? I'm sheltering. Finally got rid of that f***ing old hag and her awful brats.
It took me 4 grueling hours to sober him up, and I started to wonder if it was worth it. But there was no other way to get what I needed. I laid it all out for him. Army intelligence needed his help on an undercover operation to help spot a suspected fencing outlet for sensitive bugging devices that had been stolen. All he had to do was come with me and pretend to want to buy some bugging devices. I explained that I would get a look at the parts numbers, and if it's them, bingo, we got our fence. So I left him nodding thoughtfully over that, went to a booth, slid his identiplate into the slot, and placed a call to the owner of the Eyes and Ears of Voltar Company. It was already after hours, so I called his home. Yes, I know the store is closed. Is it closed to a 1 million credit contract? Good. All right. 1930 hours. We'll meet you there. The owner, all by himself, bless him, opened the back door and let us in. His name was Spurk. He was delighted to be serving the army. He told us to ignore the shells. That was common bugging stuff for wives on the trails of their husbands and domestic police checking up on their superiors. He carefully worked the combinations of a big vault door and started bringing out the real goodies, stacking them on the counter in front of us. Then Spurk showed us his pride and joy. They were tiny respondometers, which, when implanted in the temple or brow bones, picked up everything carried on the optical and oral nerves of the subject and transmitted it to a small receiver that looked like a home view screen. He said it only had a range of 200 miles, but then he trotted out the 831 relayer, which increased the effective range to 10,000 miles. Now I was getting somewhere. He had 2 complete sets. So with these, I can see and hear everything the subject sees and hears, even if I'm thousands of miles away?
Absolutely.
Uh-huh. That was all I needed to know. I stepped back, pulled my blade gun, and shot him in the throat. The colonel, startled by the fly of blood, wasn't the steady old campaigner I thought he would be. He went for his gun. What can you expect of Supply? He barely got the gun out of his holster before I put a spinning blade in his throat, too. He staggered back and tried to staunch the gush of blood, then fell writhing and dying. What a slaughterhouse! Blood all over the place! I reached for the boxes.
Stop right there, Sultan Grease.
Provocation Section Chief Razator stood in the frame of the back door, a blast gun leveled steadily at me.
You're so inept. You make too many mistakes, Grease. And I got all the action recorded in living color. It's all here. The head plumber's office, the meeting with that young cellologist, and this very messy mess you made.
You're the one who blew up my Airbus in the mountains.
Of course I am. I got back that counterfeit money before you idiot, could start an investigation that would lead back to us. The only reason you're alive is because you set up a magic mail to send those pictures of me to the commander of the Death Battalion if anything happened to you. Now, I want those originals and all copies.
Oh, I don't have them on me. Don't be stupid. Let me get this straight. You want an even trade. I turn over your pictures, you give that camera and all originals to me.
Right. Before somebody else kills you. You're prime meat, Grease. I'm tired of saving your hide to save mine.
Listen, it's a stalemate. I'll make a bargain with you. You help me clean this mess up. We'll go to my office and make the trade. What do you say? What could he say? I had to dig the blades out of the throats. A messy job. I emptied the cash drawer and left it on the floor. After I carefully packed every precious box of bugging devices I could find and put them into Razator's stolen car, we lugged the colonel's body and his driver's body out to their car and loaded them in. Then I took the safety off of a blast stick and carefully wrapped it in the colonel's cooling hand. I got the automatic pilot set, and the colonel's air car flew away into the night sky. Then I emptied a can of cleaning spirits around the counter and Spirk's body and dropped an igniter into it. Let's get out of here. We ran out to Razator's stolen air car as the flames leaped up higher. Raza started to climb into the car.
I take it back. You sure are thorough.
I sure am. And I put 10 inches of knife section blade in his back.
Oh!
I pushed Raza's body over and slid under the wheel stick. The air car soared up into the low night clouds, tinted orange now by the fire, and soon mingled with the normal flow of traffic. I flew out over the River Vile, held on to the hilt of the knife, and shoved Razator's body out almost over his provocation section area. I landed at my office and carried my loot into the basement. Finally, I went out and put the stolen air car on automatic and sent it off to crash where it would. Help the police is my motto. The widow tail was lying in the grass on her belly, gazing with rapt adoration at Prod Biddle's defender. I was amazed to see her bandaged from the waist up with patches on her face. Prod had removed her warts and lifted her sagging breasts. I marched up and was all business. I am Officer Sultan Grease. Have your medical supplies from Zanko arrived? Are you set up for the test case?
You sound just like Professor Gyrant Slab.
Well, I should hope so. He's my great-uncle, yes. Now, are you set up and ready for the test case?
Oh, let me show you, sir.
He led me into the hospital. It was immaculately set up as an operating theater. Lights, spin drills, racks of knives, culture flasks, heaters, and flames. I see you've used the table already. No, I mean her operations.
Oh, that?
That's fine. I know you had to see if the equipment works.
Oh, her equipment really works. There's more I can...
Yes. Now, this test case is top secret and vitally important. I have the equipment that you are to install right here. You must study the directions and prepare.
I will obey you, Officer Grease. No slips.
As we headed back toward the apparatus hangar, the world had never seemed more beautiful. I was finally in control and would soon be safe on Earth. The communications buzzer went off. I picked up the instrument and my blood started to congeal. I was wanted at the base. Now. Lumbar had a crew of men in bilious yellow uniforms at a bilious yellow truck that said, "Vermin and insects. Kill 'em, exterminators." He grabbed me by my lapels.
Heller is gone for now. I, of course, have seen to that. Now, show me where those boxes are.
I was handed some yellow coveralls to slip on, and carrying various exterminator equipment, we walked in a very businesslike way over to the airlock and entered the tug. Lumbar sent his crack saboteurs down the ladder into the hold. There were 16 boxes down there now. They inventoried Heller's stash. It turned out to be mostly odds and ends an engineer would want for repairs, spares, wires, capacitors, and such. Box number 1 was trouble. It contained 2 complete sets of Voltar Elementary School Kit number 13, a laboratory lecture machine that atomically converts carbon up 2 atomic numbers to oxygen or down 5 atomic numbers to hydrogen. It could provide them with a pollution-free fuel.
That could upset everything. particularly one certain very important Earth person. We must not upset him. I want you to fix those machines so they will run for a few hours and then just cease, with no visible explanation. Can you do that? Yes, good. The embarrassment will finish him. Reese, go outside and stall Heller if he comes back too quickly. Go! We have to have time to finish this job.
The following morning, it was time to lure Heller to his operation. I waited until I felt sure Countess Crack would be gone, then strolled into the tug with a smile I did not feel. Well, Heller, time for your physical readiness exam.
Oh, I'm ready enough, Sultan.
Jethro, you don't understand espionage. Where we're going, they do all their police records with identifying marks. Now, what do you call that? There's a small scar on your shoulder and a tiny little scar right there by your eyebrow. That's 2 identifying marks.
That? You won't believe this, but I got hit with a stone-headed arrow on a primitive planet once. The onboard doctor laughed himself into fits. There I was with a blast gun and got hit with an arrow. It's nothing.
It was not going well, but I still had my secret weapon, Earth psychology. It says that a child, when denied what it wants, goes into what is called a tantrum. It is one of their scientific terms. I went into stage 1. You're trying to make my job difficult. You're a meanie! That is a magic psychological term. Heller looked at me strangely, so I went immediately into stage 2, negation. If you don't go with me for your physical readiness appointment, I won't stamp any more orders for you. It was working. He was peering at me, perplexed. It was time for stage 3, convulsive denial. I fell on the floor on my back and writhed, beating my heels on the floor in a furious tattoo, simulating an epileptiform seizure. That's what gets them. The adults believe the child is in the last convulsions of dying.
Oh, for God's sake, Sultan, you don't have to put on a phony act. Look, if my not going will get you into trouble with Lombar Hist, I'll go.
I had him. Earth psychology works every time. It took a great deal of doing. Heller had to be convinced by Prod Biddle's defender that there was still a bit of that stone arrowhead lodged in the bone that could work its way into his brain. And so, reluctantly, he agreed to submit to the anesthetic, but only if a security recorder was set up to record the entire operation. I set it up all right, and as Heller drifted under the anesthetic, I moaned dramatically, as though violently ill at the thought of Heller going under the knife. It would be a very convincing performance for the Countess Crack. And then, as I left the room, retching, I arranged for the table the recorder was on to get bumped, ever so naturally. There would be sound, but the visual record of the operation would be lost. I had him now. It wasn't as good as the Earth psychiatrist's prefrontal lobotomies. That I held in complete awe. They merely push a common ice pick under the eyelids and slash the brain to hamburger. And if the patient doesn't die at once, he lives on as a vegetable and dies in any case within 2 to 5 years. That would be my fondest dream for Heller. But I could make do with this. I would know everything Heller was doing. When Heller came to, I got him back to the tug, then rushed to my rooming house and zoomed up the stairs. My hands were quivering with anticipation as I swept some empty canisters off a table and set up the activator receiver. I had to see how this equipment worked. The whole success of the Earth operation depended on it. I turned on the separate view screen. Nothing! Not even a crackle! I turned up the activator receiver till it was practically shooting blue streams. Nothing! Damn spark, he must have been lying. Serves him right to get himself killed. Then it occurred to me that the whole rig might be underpowered. I pulled out the 831 relayer and hooked it up. Nothing! I boosted every manual gain knob I could find. Wait, I heard something. A faint, rhythmic sound. It was breathing. Maybe Hella was sleeping. Well, I had gotten something anyway. There was something else.
Are you all right, honey?
My God! It was the Countess Crack! Yes! Her picture appeared then, faint and fuzzy on the screen. It was very dim, and her face was huge. Hella must have opened his eyes.
Did you fall? Did you have an accident?
No, don't worry. I just had some identifying marks removed by a cellologist.
You what?
He explained to her, and let her look at the security recordings. Of course, there was nothing to see, but when she heard my retching on the tape, she seemed satisfied. Now my main problems were this f***ing worthless rig. The reception was terrible. I decided to keep watching, miserable as it was, and see if I could learn anything. She got Hella something to drink, then got him to take a steam bath and work out in the gym to get the anesthetic poisons out of his system. He showered and changed into a lounge suit, and as she walked by him across the gym, he pulled her to him and kissed her.
Am I forgiven?
Oh, Jet, you know I'd forgive you anything. Listen, I had to show you. I've been practicing for the review. Will you get my rifle for me? I left it right outside the airlock, I think.
I'll ask the sentry where it is.
What review? This was news. I watched through Hella's eyes as he walked down the passageway and turned the wheel on the airlock. And that's when the whole universe exploded.
Where's the rifle?
The screen flashed blue-white. The sound coming out of the speakers was like a physical blow. I frantically turned knobs to their lowest levels, and still the sound was deafening. I reached with inspiration for the 831 relayer and snatched it out of the line and turned it off. I looked back at the receiver view screen and had the most wonderful, crystal clear view of the hangar you can imagine. The sentry was trotting up carrying a blast rifle. Hella took the rifle with a thanks and closed the airlock. The screen went blank. It was the Absorbo coat! Oh, it was going to be fine. There was nothing like Absorbo coat on Earth. It was going to be just fine. All the next day, I busied myself with the last-minute bits. With the hurry and scurry, I was in no real shape for an interview with Lombard when he summoned me that evening. I was taken to the outskirts of town where Lombard's private ship sat like a dark shadow in an open, abandoned field. Before I could strap in, the engines throbbed and the ship took off. Lombard's face glowed green, lit from below by the panel lights.
Hello, Sultan. I'm going to take you where you can hear something that will convince you.
We were gaining altitude. One of the twin moons of Volta was just rising, spreading a long shadowed light across the ground far below. Things stood out in surreal relief against an unreal background. Abruptly, Lombard began a sort of sing-song lecture, like a professor.
Any successful revolution or successful coup d'etat, it requires that the revolutionaries possess an operating or supply base beyond the reach of the force they seek to overthrow. Without such a base, one cannot overthrow an existing regime. You, Sultan, are now in full control of that base and its supplies. You must not fail me.
Lombard's hands darted to the automatic position switches, and the complex navigational system of the flying gun clicked in so she would go to and hold on exact coordinates. The gun steadied down and her engines dropped to an inaudible pitch. Lombard, freed of flying, sat back. In the far distance was the hole in the landscape against a mountain that marked where Palace City lay, forever, 13 minutes in the future. There was really nothing there to see.
You see that? The lords there in their fine robes are plotting against me. The people of this and every other Voltarian planet are just lying in wait to rise up and kill me. The only possible solution is to seize control of Palace City and the power of the throne. and then properly use the power to slaughter the people. Don't think for a minute I can't do it. I'm the only one brilliant and strong-willed enough to do it. The lords are weak, the people are riffraff. It's my duty. So this problem is to take over the palace city. No one has ever done it. It is considered impossible. But then no one ever had Blito P3. We do. So we have our secret weapon.
He had reached into his tunic and now dropped a small bottle of pills on the gun control ledge in front of him. On the bottle was a label that said I.G. Barbin, Pharmaceutical, New York. I knew the bottle. Methadrine, a powerful amphetamine. Then he took out and opened a cellophane package. It was Turkish heroin. Part of the most recent shipment on the Blixo, no doubt. The moonlight made it greenish, like dried venom.
These are our artillery. You will maintain our monopoly on this, Sultan, while we addict the lords and rob the people of their will to resist. And when I am Emperor, Sultan, you will be the head of the apparatus.
It made me uneasy. Just to listen to this kind of talk could bring torture and execution.
That upstart snob Jethro Heller had no idea what he threatened. And those idiots down there worship the likes of Heller. Little do they know that I can outfly a dozen Hellers. That was a clever trick, Sultan. Only you would have thought of loosing that rotten whore Countess Crack on him. Clever. Clever. There was every chance she'd get him. Pity she hasn't. That's all right. You won't have long to run. You know, I've assigned our two best agents to you on Earth, Rat and Turb. They're to shadow Heller at all times. Here are orders for a project that Rat is to do as soon as you arrive. It has to do with the identity Heller will be given. You see, I can have clever ideas too, somewhat more refined than the Countess Crack idea.
I opened the sheet he handed me in the dim moonlight, and what I read made my hair stand on end. Blito P3 is the only place anyone ever heard of where a gutter bum and criminal can rise by normal social processes to a point of absolute planetary control. It was probably this fact that attracted Lronhubbard to it in the first place. On Earth, one man and his family had risen to such a position. He controlled the planet's energy companies, he controlled its drug companies, he controlled its finances, and he controlled many other things, including, to all intents and purposes, its governments. Although he didn't know it, we ourselves did business with him. His name was Delbert John Rockacenter, and the birth certificate and credentials which Lronhubbard was ordering Rat to procure for Heller were in the name of Delbert John Rockacenter Jr. Lronhubbard smiled.
Yes, Heller will not get 10 steps into that society before he is nabbed. The big one will hear of it instantly and have Heller put behind bars. Heller may even be committed to an insane asylum for life. It can't miss. Now, there is this other matter of a crew for that tug. I have found a crew of 5. They are pirates I had rescued from execution. They have experience with the will-be-was drives. They are a race that calls themselves anti-Mancos, exiled long ago from Manco for ritual murders. They hate the fleet. They hate Manco. And oh, will they hate Heller. That's your crew. Now, earlier, when I heard about that tug, I ordered 2 war players to duty at the Earth base. They will not be under your orders. If Heller tries to use the tug locally, They have orders to shoot it down. Now, there are just a few things more. One, if at any time it seems that Hela is going to succeed, and there is no other way to stop him, you are to murder him. And finally, I have given secret orders to someone in your vicinity. You will never suspect who it is. The orders I have given are these. If you fail to handle Blito P3, if you fail to keep our ammunition coming, if Hela gets loose and messes things up, if in any way you play me false, that someone has explicit orders to murder you.
I felt as though the moonlight had turned somehow to ice. Lumbar looked at his watch. Then he held up a finger to me, and the most beatific expression came over his face.
Shh! There it was. Oh, there it was. Didn't you hear it? The voice! The voice! I brought you here so you could hear the voice. There! There it is again. Hear it? Lombard East. Come be the Emperor. The destiny of Volta pleads for you to take the crown. You see? Now that you have heard it, you know that everything I have had to do is true, is destined. Oh, I am so glad you were here to vouch for it.
A conviction drove through me like a blast gun bolt. Lumbar hissed was insane. All the psychology textbook psychopathic symptoms of a paranoid schizophrenic, complete with megalomania and oral hallucinations, were there. I was under the control of a complete lunatic, and there was no way to escape it. It was very late when I finally got back. Frantically, I began to scoop things up and throw them into bags.
Oh.
Don't just stand there. Help me pack. I have to get moved out of here and aboard, or I'll get no sleep tonight.
Yeah. You going to be gone for a long time? Years and years?
You'll get plenty of sleep on a bench in debt court if you don't pay your back rent. 50 credits.
I pulled out my wallet. I didn't have all that much left, and then I noticed the counterfeit 100. I took it out and handed it over.
In memory of my pleasant stay here, you deserve it. Goodbye, Mealy. May you enjoy your immediate future.
I grabbed my box and left. It was nearly 4 a.m. by the time I got to the tug. Ski refused to help me get my baggage into the ship. I decided it was time to get even. I handed over the rest of my counterfeit money.
Goodbye, Ski. Whatever happens to you, I hope it's what you truly deserve.
He walked away without looking back. How is it, I wondered, that Hela can give people money and have them happy? And I give them money, and they just look at me so oddly. I'd have to study up on it in the psychology books. I stumbled wearily back toward my cabin to get some sleep, and there was Hela in the passageway, rested, glowing with health in a clean blue fleet work jumper, his red racing cap perched on the back of his blonde hair.
What is this horrible stink?
He was looking into my cubicle. I edged past him through the door. My gear was scattered all over the floor where Ski had dumped it, complete with decayed, broken, disposable dishes that had been packed in the rush. He'd even packed floor sweepings. Dirt.
If you were to step aboard a fleet vessel with gear like this, they'd execute you. I don't see a dress uniform in any of this.
They don't wear them on Earth, okay?
Well, you'll need one for the launching. I'll go catch your driver and give him some money and have him get one.
Oh. I groaned. I couldn't cope with this mania for looking nice, especially at this hour.
You take all that
baggage outside the ship and sort it into these ship bags and get it into the laundry. That includes the uniform you have on. Now, take a shower and be quick. You won't have facilities much longer.
I nearly wept. All I wanted was some sleep. I actually ached. These fleet guys! The shower did help. But when I went to collect my clothes from the laundry, I discovered I'd put them in the disintegrator. I stood there in my underwear, weeping quietly to myself. The fleet! But wait. Ski had been sent to get a uniform for me. I rushed to my cubicle and found a package on the bed. I ripped it open. What was I looking at? Dead black cloth, red embroidery, bones, hangman's noose. It was the dress uniform of a colonel in the death battalions. It even had the belts that looked like bleeding intestines. What? The ship was coming apart! I leaped to my feet and wrapped a towel around me and rushed up the passageway. Hella was sitting on the control deck in the local pilot chair, talking on the comm system to the engine room.
I'll lift her off easy so I don't want much drive.
My gods, Hella, don't try to fly in this hangar!
Come on, that's what tugs are for, to move around in constricted spaces. Hold on, Sultan. She's jumpy.
Whoa! I went sailing down the passage and brought up hard against the door. Hella swarmed down the now vertical rungs and offered me a hand into the crew salon. He handed a canister of hot jolt to me, smiling.
You should lay off the bubble brew before a voyage, Sultan.
I carried the hot jolt back to my room and had no sooner sat down than a set of blinkers peered in.
I could not resist the extreme pleasure of seeing you off, and I need you to stamp these. Oh, a Death Battalion uniform. How appropriate. The color matches the soul.
I stamped his papers. The worst was over. This would all be far behind me soon.
Well, I'm leaving now. I heard a rumor that these ships blow up, so have a nice voyage.
I stretched out once again. If I could just slip into sleep, I would wake up some hours later, hurtling through space far away. What a lovely thought to drift off to. What now? I leaped up with a new terror and bolted to the airlock. There was an 80-foot-high reviewing stand being erected beside the ship. Trucks were roaring in 6 abreast, while crews ran around like ants, erecting portable stages and bars. In total panic, I rushed to the control deck. Hella was dropping the meteor shields into position to cover the ports. Hella, you can't have a going-away party. This is a secret mission.
I'm really sorry, Sultan, but we do have to christen the ship. She lost her designation when she was transferred out of the fleet. You don't ever want to fly around in an unchristened ship. That's about the most unlucky thing you can do. The things are likely to blow up if you go on doing that.
I wandered in a daze down to my cubicle and sat down on a gimbal chair. I stood immediately back up. I'd sat on something. It was a small bottle with a label that said I.G. Barbin, New York, amphetamines, methadrine, 5 milligrams, 100 tablets. I remembered with horror that Lumbar had said there would be a spy on my tail. I opened the bottle and poured the heart-shaped pills into my hand. I'd always been leery of having anything to do with speed, but at this moment, I was desperate. I cut off a third of one of the tablets and put it under my tongue. It was bitter. Then, a tremendous hot rush hit me, and my heart began to speed up. I became confident. I no longer cared where the bottle came from or that there was a spy on my tail. What beautiful, lovely stuff this was. I pulled on the handsome Death Battalion uniform with movements that were graceful, almost in slow motion, though really being a bit too fast. I pulled on the skin-tight pants. Actually, they were 3 sizes too big, but that didn't matter. One boot was too small, one was too large. But that seemed normal. The mirror seemed to be in a euphoric state with the gorgeous image that it shined back. Then I realized I had spent an hour getting dressed. I sallied forth and floated up the passageways, hardly touching the rungs. Outside there were choruses, bands, dancing girls, trucks full of refreshments. And here came our crew. 5 pirates, still under death sentence, slipped off an apparatus police van and slinked up the steps with their bags. I stepped to the airlock to greet them. Anti-Mancos. Heads a bit narrow at the top, then swelling out some on each side to make the face a sort of triangle with a wide, savage jaw. Averaging 300 pounds apiece with swarthy complexions, they have a lot of hate in their small, narrow-set eyes. They rushed past me and into the ship, shying away from my outstretched hand with its lovely red spikes. Feeling quite benign, I surveyed the scene. There was Snells, dear Snells, with his company of men. I backed up and bumped into Heller. And my, didn't he look fine in his fleet dress uniform.
What are you doing in Death Battalion uniform?
It's Snells. I mean, there seems to be a lot of topples here amongst the dance ships.
Are you all right?
Of course. Lumbar is all right. Whatever Snell says goes up to the Bear Girls, of course. Unless the bands don't roll.
Sultan, I want you to sit down right here and take it easy. This'll be over and we'll be gone soon.
Yeah. I can't imagine why he was concerned. The world looked great to me. It was a dazzling spectacle from where I sat. Gay bunting and flags everywhere, tankers of top. A stunning fireworks display soared half a mile in the air, and the party started with a bang. There was a big home view crew with cameras on cranes capturing it all, and swarms of reporters and cameramen. Well, where there are free drinks, there are reporters. They were all over Heller, having him pose this way and that, and there were hundreds of dancing girls, and then dancing bears. Somebody brought me some cake, shaped like a very realistic nymph's hand, smeared with red jam, so they could photograph me eating it. It seemed to make them very happy. And they left. A Palace City air limo pulled up, and the king's own astrographer, Tars Roke, stepped out to personally wish his dear friend Jetro Heller well on his mission. A fleet chorus was singing some fleet song, and the crowd took it up, and then maybe 3 miles above us, 250 fleet space fighters were flying in formation. They fired their guns all at once, and the racketing blasts sent 8-mile-wide bands of flame that dissolved into white clouds, spelling out in huge, swirling letters, "Good luck, Jet!" And although I was about as high as those letters, something nagged at me that this was not quite right for a secret mission. But I didn't have time to think about it long, because another limousine had grabbed everyone's attention. By the gods, it was Heidi Heller, here for the christening, hugging her brother as the crowd went wild with shouts of "Heidi and Jet! Heidi and Jet!" She was dressed as an angel, and her heavenly form was projected as a
This has been a Sound Editions presentation from Random House.